Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I was pulling up some old floorboards to replace the insulation. Everything went as expected until I reached the corner near the back door. One board didn't match. It was darker, smoother, and didn't creak like the others. When I pried it up, it came loose too easily. Beneath it, I found a small compartment packed with dirt and ash. Inside was a wrapped cloth, stained and stiff. I unwrapped it and found a Polaroid photo. A man kneeling, terrified, with something sharp pressed to his back. The background was this exact room, my kitchen, before I moved in. Under the photo was a single phrase etched in pencil: "I told you not to scream." The photo felt cold between my fingers. The man's face was turned slightly toward the camera, and I could see the whites of his eyes wide with terror. His mouth was open as if caught mid-plea. The blade against his back caught the flash, creating a thin line of reflected light. What disturbed me most wasn't the weapon or the fear in his expression. It was how familiar the kitchen looked, down to the same cabinet handles I'd been meaning to replace. I set the photo aside and examined the compartment more carefully. The wood around the edges had been sanded smooth, deliberately crafted to hold secrets. More dirt fell away as I brushed it clean, revealing scratches in the wood grain. Numbers maybe, or letters worn down by moisture and time. The cloth smelled of something metallic and sour, a scent that made my stomach turn. That evening I contacted the previous owner's real estate agent. She remembered the sale clearly, described the seller as eager to move, mentioned he'd dropped the price twice before I made my offer. When I asked about the kitchen renovations, she paused. Said the seller had mentioned replacing some flooring himself, called it a weekend project, but the permits I'd found in the basement showed no record of any kitchen work. The next morning I drove to the county clerk's office. The records showed 3 previous owners over the past decade. The most recent had owned the house for less than 2 years before selling to me. Before him, an elderly woman who'd inherited it from her son. And before her, a man whose name appeared on multiple police reports I wasn't supposed to see but glimpsed over a clerk's shoulder. I returned home and studied the photo again under different lighting. The man's clothing looked professional, a button-down shirt and what appeared to be dress pants. His wedding ring caught the camera flash. Behind him, barely visible in the shadow, I could make out part of a second figure. Just an arm, but enough to see they were wearing gloves. The basement yielded more questions. Behind the water heater, I found a section of concrete that looked newer than the rest. The color was slightly different, and when I tapped it with a hammer, it sounded hollow. I didn't have the tools to investigate further, but I marked the spot with chalk. I began paying attention to my neighbors differently. The woman across the street who always seemed to be watching from her window. The man next door who'd lived here longer than anyone and always asked too many questions about my renovation projects. The postal worker who mentioned in passing that the previous owner used to get a lot of official-looking mail, the kind that made him nervous to deliver. 3 nights later, I woke to the sound of someone walking around my kitchen. Soft footsteps, deliberate and careful. When I crept downstairs, the house was empty, but the loose floorboard I'd temporarily nailed back down was slightly raised. Someone had been there, someone with a key, or someone who knew another way in. I installed security cameras the following day. The footage showed nothing unusual during daylight, but the infrared revealed something disturbing. Around 3 in the morning, a figure stood motionless in my backyard for nearly an hour, just watching the house. The person knew exactly where the cameras were positioned, staying just outside their range. The elderly neighbor finally approached me while I was checking my mailbox. She spoke quietly, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. Said she'd lived here for 30 years, remembered when the house had different occupants. Mentioned a man who used to live there, quiet type who worked odd jobs and kept to himself. One day he was gone, left everything behind. The next owners found personal belongings still in the closets, food spoiled in the refrigerator. I asked her what happened to him. She looked at me strangely, said she thought I knew. Said the house had been through several owners since then, but none stayed long. Most complained about strange sounds, cold spots in certain rooms, and the feeling of being watched. She'd assumed someone had finally told me the history before I bought it. The photo began to haunt my thoughts. I'd hidden it in a drawer, but I found myself taking it out repeatedly, studying every detail. The terror in the man's eyes seemed more personal each time I looked. His face was becoming familiar, like someone I might have met but couldn't quite place. The wedding ring suggested a family somewhere, people who'd wondered what happened to him. I started researching missing persons reports online, focusing on cases from the past decade. The work was slow and depressing, scrolling through faces of people who'd simply vanished, but eventually I found a match. A man reported missing by his wife, last seen leaving work on a Friday evening. The photo in the missing person report showed the same face, the same wedding ring, the same terrified expression I'd been staring at for weeks. The case file mentioned he'd been working as a handyman, taking jobs through online platforms. His last confirmed appointment was at an address I recognized immediately. My address. He'd been hired to do some kitchen repairs, install new flooring. The job was supposed to take a weekend. He never came home. I called the police station and asked to speak with someone about a cold case. The detective who took my call sounded tired, like she'd heard similar stories before. When I mentioned the address and the missing person's name, her tone changed. She asked me to stay exactly where I was and not touch anything else. Squad cars arrived within minutes. The investigation that followed revealed more than I was prepared for. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed my suspicions about the basement concrete. The coroner estimated the remains had been there for approximately the same amount of time the man had been missing, but the case was complicated by one disturbing detail. The handyman hadn't been killed by a stranger. DNA evidence and financial records revealed he'd been blackmailing someone, demanding money in exchange for keeping quiet about something he'd discovered during a previous job. The person he'd been blackmailing was the homeowner who'd sold me the house. The same person who'd been watching from my backyard, who still had a key, who'd been checking to make sure his secret remained buried. But the most chilling discovery came when investigators matched the handwriting on the photo to samples they'd collected. The phrase, "I told you not to scream," wasn't written by the killer. It was written by the victim himself, his final act of defiance, scratched into the wood with the pencil he'd kept in his shirt pocket for measuring and marking his work. The case officially closed when they arrested the previous owner, but questions remained. How many other houses had he owned? How many other weekend handyman jobs had gone wrong? The detective mentioned they were reopening several cold cases, looking for similar patterns. I moved out before the trial began. The house sits empty now, a foreclosure sign planted in the front yard. Sometimes I drive by and see that same figure standing in the backyard, but when I look again, there's nothing there. The new floorboards I'd installed are probably hiding other secrets now, other evidence of what happened in that kitchen. The photo remains in my possession, locked in a safe deposit box downtown. Evidence in a closed case, but somehow it feels like unfinished business. The handyman's wife visits his grave every Sunday, brings fresh flowers and stays for an hour. She's never asked to see the photo, and I've never offered to show it to her. Some nights I still wake up thinking I hear footsteps in my kitchen, even though I live in a different house now. The sound is always the same, soft, deliberate, and careful, like someone searching for something they'll never find, or someone making sure a secret stays buried forever. Crime 2, there's a narrow patch of trees behind the complex. Most tenants avoid it, muddy trails, mosquitoes, nothing to see. But one of my neighbors started going out there every single night, always alone, always with a shovel. I thought maybe she was burying trash or clearing a garden. Then one morning I walked back there. There were holes, dozens of them, freshly dug, some filled in. In one of the deeper pits I saw a cloth. I reached in and pulled part of it free. It was a sleeve. Inside was a decaying arm, stiff and covered in rope marks. She had buried someone, and by the look of it, more than once. The smell hit me first, sweet and metallic, like old coins left in the rain. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I dropped the fabric and stepped back. The earth around each hole was dark, almost black, as if it had been soaked with something thicker than water. I counted 12 distinct excavation sites, each roughly the same size, human-sized. I should have called the police immediately. Instead, I found myself walking back to the building, my mind racing through every interaction I'd had with her over the past few months. She lived in the unit directly below mine. Quiet woman, maybe in her 40s, with prematurely gray hair that she kept pulled back in a tight bun. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the hallway, nothing more. She always carried herself with the careful posture of someone trying not to draw attention. That evening I positioned myself by my kitchen window. The view wasn't perfect, but I could see the edge of the wooded area. Just after the streetlights flickered on, she emerged from the building's rear exit. Same shovel, same deliberate walk toward the trees. She moved like someone who had done this countless times before, her steps sure and practiced in the darkness. I waited until she disappeared into the shadows, then grabbed a flashlight and followed at a safe distance. The sound of digging was rhythmic, almost meditative. When I got close enough to observe without being seen, I watched her work. She wasn't frantic or hurried. Each movement was calculated, efficient. She was digging a new hole, not revisiting an old one. The next morning I knocked on her door. She answered quickly, as if she'd been expecting someone. Her hands were clean, but I noticed dirt under her fingernails and a faint, earthy smell clinging to her clothes. "I've been having trouble sleeping," I said, testing the waters. "Noise at night." Her expression didn't change. The building has thin walls, sound carries. Especially outside sounds, movement in the woods. For just a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. She knew that I knew something. "Wild animals," she said simply. "They dig, foraging." I nodded and left, but her explanation felt rehearsed, too convenient. Wild animals don't dig uniform holes. They don't work with such methodical precision. Over the following weeks, I began paying closer attention to the other residents. Mrs. Patterson from the second floor mentioned that her nephew had stopped visiting suddenly. The maintenance man wondered aloud why the dumpsters seemed lighter lately, despite no change in occupancy. Small details that individually meant nothing, but together painted a disturbing picture. I started keeping a journal documenting her nightly routine. She always left at the same time, always returned within 2 hours. Sometimes she carried plastic bags in addition to the shovel. The bags looked heavy going out, empty coming back. One night, curiosity overwhelmed caution. I followed her more closely than before, close enough to hear her breathing as she worked. She was humming softly to herself, a tune I didn't recognize. The sound was almost cheerful, completely at odds with the grim nature of her task. She had dug down about 3 feet when she stopped suddenly. Without turning around, she spoke into the darkness. "You've been watching me." My blood went cold. I pressed myself against a tree trunk, hoping the shadows would hide me. "I don't mind an audience," she continued, still facing away. "But if you're going to keep coming out here, you should understand what you're seeing." She climbed out of the hole and turned toward my hiding spot. In the moonlight, her face looked different, younger somehow, despite the gray hair. There was a calmness about her that was more unsettling than any display of aggression would have been. "They were already dead when I found them," she said matter-of-factly. "I'm not a killer, I'm a cleaner." The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, uncooperative. Someone has to take care of these things. Someone has to make sure they disappear properly. The police ask too many questions, create too much paperwork. Some situations require a more direct approach. She walked closer, and I caught a whiff of that metallic smell again, stronger now. "The rope marks you saw, those weren't for me. I found that one tied up in a basement across town. Owner had been dead for weeks. Nobody was coming to check on either of them." My mind struggled to process what she was telling me. If she was telling the truth, then she wasn't a murderer. But if she was lying, I was alone in the woods with someone who had buried multiple bodies. "How many?" I managed to ask. 17 so far, some from abandoned houses, some from hoarder situations, some from people who just couldn't handle their problems anymore. There's more death in this world than you realize. Most of it just gets overlooked. She returned to her digging as if we were discussing the weather. The normalcy of her tone made everything more surreal. "Why tell me this?" "Because you were going to find out eventually, and because I might need help soon. This patch of woods is getting crowded." I left that night without another word, but her revelation stayed with me. Over the next several days, I found myself researching missing persons reports, unsolved disappearances, unexplained deaths. The numbers were staggering. People vanished from their lives with alarming frequency, many of them never investigated beyond the initial police report. But which version of her story was true? Was she a vigilante cleaning up society's forgotten casualties, or was she a serial killer with an elaborate cover story? The more I thought about it, the more both explanations seemed equally plausible and equally disturbing. I stopped following her, but I couldn't stop watching from my window. Some nights she didn't go out at all. Other nights she made multiple trips. The uncertainty was eating away at my sleep, my appetite, my ability to focus on anything else. Then one evening she knocked on my door. She was holding a manila envelope, thick with documents. "Insurance papers," she explained. "Death certificates, newspaper clippings, everything I could find about them." I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were indeed official documents, dozens of them. Death certificates for people who had died alone, obituaries for individuals with no listed survivors, police reports about bodies found in abandoned properties. If these were authentic, her story checked out. But documents can be forged, stories can be fabricated. And even if she was telling the truth about finding these bodies, what gave her the right to decide how they should be handled? "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing. I just wanted you to understand that some problems don't have clean solutions. Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same." She left without waiting for a response, and I was alone with the evidence of 17 lives that had ended in obscurity and isolation. People who had died forgotten, only to be buried in secret by a neighbor who may or may not have been responsible for their deaths in the first place. I never reported what I knew. The doubt was too overwhelming, the implications too complex. If she was telling the truth, I would be destroying someone who was trying to restore dignity to abandoned lives. If she was lying, I was an accessory after the fact to multiple murders. She moved out of the building 2 months later. I never saw her again, but sometimes I walk back to those woods. The holes have been filled in, the ground leveled and covered with new growth. You'd never know anything had been buried there. But I know, and knowing has changed everything about how I see the world around me. How many other secrets are hidden in plain sight. How many other people are quietly cleaning up messes that the rest of us are too afraid or too ignorant to acknowledge. The uncertainty follows me everywhere now. In every quiet neighbor, every unexplained absence, every story that doesn't quite add up. The truth isn't always what we think it is, and sometimes the people we should fear most are the ones who seem to be helping. Crime 3, I left it a mess, boxes, tools, old furniture, no one else had a key. But one day I opened the garage to find it perfectly organized. Shelves labeled, tools aligned, the floor swept. I figured I had blacked out or someone made a mistake. Then I found the note. It was stuck to the inside of the fuse box. "You passed inspection," it read. "We'll be watching for your next mistake." I started looking through everything. In the ceiling vent, I found a small camera taped to the duct. It had a blinking red light, still recording. The camera felt warm against my palm, like it had been running for weeks. I disconnected it carefully, my fingers trembling as I examined the micro SD card inside. The serial number had been filed off, but there was something else, a thin layer of dust on the lens that formed a partial fingerprint. Someone had touched it recently, adjusting the angle perhaps. I called the police, but they seemed uninterested. Break-ins where nothing gets stolen and everything gets cleaned don't exactly scream emergency. The officer who came by was young, tired-looking. He walked through the garage, nodding politely as I explained about the camera, the note, the impossible organization of my chaos. He took photos, wrote down my statement, and suggested I change my locks. Before leaving, he paused at the door. "You sure you didn't just forget cleaning up? Happens more than you'd think." But I knew my own mess. I remembered every box placement, every scattered tool, every oil stain on the concrete. This wasn't memory playing tricks. Someone had been inside my space, touching my belongings, watching. The camera's memory card contained 17 hours of footage. I watched myself coming and going, sometimes carrying groceries, sometimes just checking the mail. But there were gaps, periods where the recording stopped and resumed. The timestamp showed these interruptions happened during the night when I was asleep. Someone had been controlling the device remotely, turning it off when they entered. In one clip, I caught a shadow moving across the floor while I was inside the house. Just a flicker, barely visible, but enough to make my skin crawl. The shadow seemed to know exactly where the camera's blind spots were, staying just out of frame, professional, calculated. I started paying attention to details I'd never noticed before. The mailbox seemed slightly askew some mornings. My newspaper would be folded differently than usual. Small things that could be coincidences, but together formed a pattern. Someone was studying my routines, learning my habits. The note bothered me most. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, not rushed or angry, but patient. What inspection had I passed? What mistake were they waiting for? I examined every word under a magnifying glass, looking for clues about the paper, the pen, anything that might identify the writer. The paper was common printer stock, the kind you could buy anywhere. But under ultraviolet light, I discovered something unsettling. The paper fluoresced in a pattern that suggested it had been stored near cleaning chemicals. bleach specifically. I called my ex-wife. We divorced 2 years ago, not on bad terms, but she knew things about me that others didn't. She listened to my story without interrupting, then went quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember what you used to do in that garage?" she asked finally. "Work on projects, store stuff, the usual." "No, before that, when we first moved in." The memory came back slowly, like something rising from deep water. 5 years ago, I'd set up a small workshop in the garage. Nothing fancy, just a workbench where I refinished furniture as a side business. I'd advertised locally, taking pieces from people who wanted antiques restored. Most customers were pleasant, normal folks, but there was one who made me uncomfortable. An older man who'd brought in a wooden trunk. He'd stood too close while I worked, asking personal questions about my schedule, my family, whether I lived alone. His trunk had contained some disturbing items, old photographs of children who weren't smiling, newspaper clippings about missing persons. I'd finished the job quickly and refused his payment, just wanting him gone. He'd called several times after that, claiming I'd damaged something inside the trunk, demanding to come back and inspect my work. I'd stopped answering his calls, eventually changing my phone number. Then he'd shown up at my house one evening, standing on the porch with that same wooden trunk. Through the window, I'd watched him try the door handle, then walk around to the garage, testing windows. I'd called the police then too, but he'd left before they arrived. The officer who came had been different, older, more experienced. He'd taken notes, asked good questions, and promised to drive by periodically. "Guys like that," he'd said, "they don't usually give up easy. Stay alert." But weeks had passed without incident, and I'd convinced myself it was over. The man had disappeared from my thoughts, filed away with other unpleasant memories, until now. I pulled out old phone records, searching for his number, found it eventually, buried in a folder of business contacts. The name next to the number was fake. I realized that now, seeing how the letters didn't quite form a real surname. But the number was real, and when I called it, an automated message played. "The subscriber you have dialed is no longer in service." The trunk he'd brought me was distinctive, carved oak with iron hinges, probably worth more than he'd paid me to restore it. I remembered sanding away years of stains, some of which had seemed too dark, too organic. At the time, I'd assumed it was old wood stain or maybe wine. Now I wondered what else it might have been. I started researching missing persons cases from around that time period, scrolling through database after database of faces and stories. Most were teenagers, runaways, people who disappeared without violence or obvious foul play. But there was one case that caught my attention, a social worker who'd vanished while investigating reports of child abuse. Her car had been found empty by the highway, keys still in the ignition. No body, no witnesses, no resolution. The investigating detective was still active, working cold cases for the county sheriff's department. I called him, explained my situation carefully, trying not to sound paranoid or delusional. He agreed to meet, though his tone suggested skepticism. Detective Chen was nothing like the young officer who dismissed my garage situation. He studied the camera, examined the note under different lighting, and asked detailed questions about the trunk restoration and the strange customer. When I mentioned the man's behavior, his demeanor changed completely. "Can you describe him again? Height, weight, any distinguishing features?" I gave him everything I could remember: medium build, graying hair, a habit of clicking his tongue when thinking. The detective pulled out a thick folder and showed me a collection of photographs. The third one from the left made my blood freeze. Same face but younger, same uncomfortable stare. "We've been looking for this man for 8 years," Detective Chen said quietly. "Multiple investigations, different jurisdictions. He moves around, changes identities, but always the same pattern. He finds people who work alone, studies them, gains access to their spaces. Sometimes he just watches, sometimes." He didn't need to finish. The implication hung in the air between us like smoke. The social worker I mentioned, she'd been asking questions about a man matching this description. Week before she disappeared, her supervisor got a call from someone claiming she'd been harassing elderly residents, conducting illegal searches. The caller knew details about her cases that weren't public record. The detective leaned forward, his voice dropping. "We think he targets people who might discover something about his activities. Social workers, private investigators, anyone who asks too many questions or gets too close." My mouth went dry. Why clean my garage? Why not just? "Because you stopped looking, you changed your number, avoided contact, forgot about him. To him, that meant you passed the test. You weren't a threat anymore." Chen paused, studying my face. "But now you're asking questions again." We developed a plan. I would continue my normal routine while the police set up surveillance. The camera in my garage would be replaced with their own equipment, and I'd wear a small recording device. If he came back, they'd be ready. But 3 weeks passed without contact. No more mysterious organization, no additional notes, no signs of intrusion. The detective assured me this was normal. Predators like this often went dormant when they sensed law enforcement involvement. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, evaluated, tested again. Then my neighbor mentioned something that made my stomach drop. She'd seen a man in my driveway the previous week, wearing work clothes and carrying a toolbox. He'd told her he was there to read the gas meter, but she'd noticed he spent more time looking at windows than checking pipes. When she'd asked to see his identification, he'd left quickly. "Seemed like a nice enough fellow," she said. "Older gentleman, very polite, though there was something about his eyes that bothered me, like he was memorizing everything." I called Detective Chen immediately, but the investigation had stalled. Without new evidence or direct contact, there wasn't much they could do beyond periodic check-ins. The case file would remain open, but active surveillance was too expensive to maintain indefinitely. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound seemed amplified, branches scraping against windows, the house settling, cars passing on the street. Around midnight I heard something that made me sit up completely awake. It was the sound of my garage door opening, the mechanical hum of the motor engaging. I grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping beside my bed and moved carefully toward the window overlooking the driveway. The garage was open, but I couldn't see inside from this angle. My car was still there, undisturbed, no obvious signs of intrusion. But as I watched, a figure emerged from the shadows inside the garage, tall, deliberate in movement, carrying what looked like a small bag. The person looked directly up at my window, as if knowing exactly where I'd be standing. Even in the darkness, I could make out a smile. Then he raised one hand in a slow, casual wave before disappearing into the night. The police found no evidence of break-in, no fingerprints, no DNA, but they did find something else, a second note, this one left on my workbench where I'd be sure to see it. The message was different this time, more personal. "You failed the second inspection. Time for remedial action." Detective Chen ordered immediate protection, but it was too late for simple surveillance. This had become a direct threat, an escalation that suggested imminent danger. They moved me to a safe house while crime scene technicians processed my garage, my house, everything. The forensic report revealed traces of the same cleaning chemicals I detected on the first note, but also something else, microscopic fibers that matched fabric found at 3 other crime scenes across 2 states. Scenes where people had simply vanished, leaving behind clean, organized spaces and confused neighbors who couldn't quite explain what seemed wrong. I've been in protective custody for 6 months now. The investigation continues, but the man has vanished again, probably adapting his methods, finding new victims. Sometimes I wonder if I really passed that first inspection, or if this was always how it was meant to end, with me hiding, looking over my shoulder, never knowing when he might decide to finish what he started. The detective visits regularly, updating me on leads that go nowhere, witnesses who saw nothing, evidence that explains everything except where he is now. They tell me I'm safe, that the protection will continue as long as necessary. But late at night, when the safe house creaks and settles around me, I find myself listening for the sound of a garage door opening, waiting for someone to wave at my window. Because part of me knows that no matter how far I run or how well I hide, he's still out there, still watching, still deciding whether I've truly learned my lesson or if I need one final inspection. Crime 4, this wasn't a fixer-upper, just old. The wallpaper in the hallway had started to curl near the edges. I planned to replace it, but before I could, it peeled away in a long, clean strip. Behind it, scrawled across the wall in red ink, were symbols, geometric, frantic, layered on top of each other. Between the markings, I saw handprints, tiny ones, pressed so hard they left indentations in the plaster. As I pulled back more paper, more appeared. Then words, shaky and low on the wall, "He lives between the paint." That night I heard scratching coming from inside the wall. I called the previous owner the next morning. Her voice carried that particular strain you hear when someone's trying too hard to sound normal. She mentioned renovations, quick fixes before the sale, but her words came too fast. When I asked about the children who might have lived there, she paused. A long pause that filled with static and shallow breathing. "There were no children in that house," she said finally. "Not for decades. But I had the handprints. I had the crayon marks I'd found behind the kitchen cabinet, the growth chart penciled faintly on the basement door frame. Someone small had lived here, had hidden messages where only demolition would reveal them. The local library kept property records going back 50 years. I spent afternoons there, spreading documents across a corner table while afternoon light filtered through dusty windows. The house had changed hands 6 times since the 70s. Each transaction seemed rushed, the selling prices dropping consistently below market value. In the margins of one deed, someone had written a phone number in pencil, so faint I almost missed it. I called the number from my car in the library parking lot. A woman answered, her voice immediately guarded when I mentioned the address. She agreed to meet me at a diner across town, but only after I promised I wasn't a reporter. She arrived wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Her hands shook as she stirred sugar into coffee she never drank. She'd been a social worker, she told me, back when the system was different, when things fell through cracks that seemed impossibly wide now. "I tried to remove him," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the diner's ambient noise. "The father was convincing, charming, made me feel like I was the one seeing things wrong." She described visiting the house, how the child would hide when she arrived, how she'd find him in impossible spaces, behind water heaters, inside closets that should have been too small. The father always had explanations. The boy was shy, traumatized by his mother's departure, prone to games and imagination. But the walls, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. I swear I heard him inside the walls. I showed her photographs of the handprints, the messages I'd uncovered. Her face went pale. She reached into her purse and pulled out a file folder, yellowed and worn at the edges. I kept copies, she said. I wasn't supposed to, but I kept them. The reports painted a picture of escalating concern and mounting bureaucratic resistance. Medical records showing injuries explained away as accidents. School reports of a child who spoke to walls, who drew pictures of rooms within rooms, who insisted his real home was somewhere else entirely. The last report was dated just before the social worker's retirement. The child had disappeared. The father claimed he'd sent the boy to live with relatives out of state, provided documentation that looked authentic enough to satisfy cursory investigation. Case closed. I tried to find him, she told me, her hands now gripping the coffee cup like an anchor. Called the relatives, drove to the addresses. Nothing, no trace. Back at the house, I began systematically removing wallpaper from every room. Behind layers of different patterns, I found a progression of messages. Early ones were simple, names, basic words. Later ones grew more sophisticated, more desperate. Room by room, I uncovered a timeline written in hiding. In the basement, behind paneling that had been installed over the original stone walls, I found the most detailed writing. Instructions, seemingly written to himself, about staying quiet, about moving through spaces adults couldn't access, about surviving. The scratching I'd heard that first night returned regularly now. Not random sounds, but patterns, rhythmic, deliberate. When I pressed my ear to different walls, I could trace paths, a network of spaces between the structure itself. I hired a contractor to open the wall where the sounds seemed strongest. We worked carefully, afraid of what we might disturb. Behind the drywall, we found a space just wide enough for a small person to crawl through. The wood was worn smooth from repeated passage. Scratches marked the passage of someone moving through darkness. At the far end of the crawl space, we found a small chamber created by the intersection of support beams. Inside, a pillow, a blanket, comic books with pages worn soft from repeated reading. A notebook filled with observations about the adults above, their routines, their conversations, their vulnerabilities. The final entry was written in different handwriting, shakier, rushed. He knows I know, he's coming. I contacted the police, but the case had been cold for decades. The original investigating officer had died. The father had moved away, no forwarding address. The social worker agreed to provide her files, but warned me that the system had changed, that accountability was different now, that sometimes the truth disappeared along with the people who could testify to it. I still live in the house, though I've stopped the renovations. Sometimes late at night I hear the scratching, softer now, almost tentative, like someone checking to see if the pathways are still clear, if the hiding places still exist. I leave food in the basement sometimes, small portions that disappear by morning. I tell myself it's mice, that old houses have sounds, that the past can't actually inhabit the present. But I've started leaving notes too, simple ones. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here. Come out when you're ready. They disappear along with the food. I know what the rational explanation is. I know what the authorities would say, what a psychologist would diagnose, what common sense would dictate. But I also know the sound of someone trying not to be found, the particular quality of breath held too long, the weight of secrets that burrow into spaces between what we can prove and what we know to be true. The wallpaper in the living room has started to curl again. I haven't touched it. I'm waiting to see what reveals itself this time, what messages emerge from the spaces we pretend don't exist. Sometimes the truth lives in the gaps, in the places between the official story and the shadows that move when no one is supposed to be watching. I keep the lights on now, all of them, and I listen. Crime 5, I've changed the locks 4 times. Each time within days the keys no longer work. I call a locksmith and they say the mechanism has been tampered with. One of them asked if I gave anyone a master key. I live alone. I started marking the locks with a small scratch just to be sure. This morning the marks were gone and the doorknob was different, shinier, newer. Someone's not breaking in. They're maintaining the house for me, or maybe for themselves. Now I find things in the fridge I didn't buy, and the mirror fogs up even when I haven't showered. The bananas were perfectly ripe, yellow with just the right amount of brown spots. I hate bananas, always have, but there they were, sitting in my fruit bowl like they belonged there. The receipt was still in the bag, paid with cash, purchased from the store 2 blocks away. I checked my bank statements, no withdrawal matching the amount. I started keeping a notebook, every strange occurrence, every misplaced item, every unexplained change. The handwriting got shakier as the entries multiplied. A new brand of coffee in my cabinet, milk that expired 3 days from now when I just bought some yesterday. Bread moved from the counter to the refrigerator. Small things, domestic things, things that could be explained away by forgetfulness or stress. But I'm not forgetful. I work in data analysis. Details are my profession. The locksmith who installed the 5th set came recommended by a neighbor. He examined the previous lock with unusual interest, turning the discarded mechanism over in his weathered hands. His fingers traced patterns I couldn't see. When I asked what he found, he said someone had been practicing. The scratches weren't random. They followed the internal structure of the lock, like someone learning its anatomy. He asked if I'd noticed anything else unusual. I mentioned the groceries, the mirror, the way my coffee maker sometimes brewed a full pot when I'd only pressed the button for a single cup. He nodded slowly, wrote something in his notebook, and charged me half his usual rate. That afternoon, I installed a security camera facing the front door. Nothing fancy, just something to capture who might be coming and going. The first week showed only delivery drivers and the occasional neighbor walking their dog, normal suburban rhythms. Then I noticed the timestamps. There were gaps, minutes here and there where the recording simply stopped, not corrupted files or technical glitches, clean cuts as if someone had edited out specific moments. I checked the device, no signs of tampering. The memory card was original, sealed, but those missing minutes haunted me. I started staying home more, working remotely when possible, watching, listening. The house felt different when I was actively observing it, quieter, too quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum more softly, as if trying not to disturb something. The breakthrough came from the most mundane source imaginable. My water bill arrived showing usage patterns that didn't match my routine. Showers taken when I was at work, dishwasher cycles running in the middle of the night. Someone wasn't just entering my home, they were living in it. I called the utility company. The representative explained that smart meters could sometimes malfunction, recording phantom usage. But when I pressed for details, she admitted the readings showed human patterns, regular intervals, habitual timing, someone with a schedule. The police officer who took my report was younger than I expected. She asked the usual questions about missing items, signs of forced entry, whether I'd given anyone keys. When I explained about the locks being replaced rather than broken, she paused, made a note, asked if I'd lived alone for long. 3 months, I told her, since the divorce. She asked about the divorce, amicable or contentious, whether my ex-spouse had been controlling or possessive. I said it had been quiet. Papers signed, assets divided, separate ways. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was entirely true. The officer suggested changing my routine, vary my schedule, maybe stay with family for a few days, but I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving would somehow make things worse, like abandoning a crime scene before understanding what crime had been committed. That night I sat in my living room with all the lights off, waiting. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs. Around what should have been midnight, I heard the sound of a key in the lock, smooth, practiced. The door opened with barely a whisper. Footsteps moved through the kitchen, soft but confident, someone who knew where everything was. The refrigerator opened, items rustled. Water ran briefly in the sink. A cabinet closed with the careful precision of someone trying not to wake a sleeping house. I held my breath, my phone was in my hand, ready to call for help, but something stopped me. Curiosity, maybe, or the strange realization that whoever this was, they weren't there to hurt me. They were there to take care of things, to maintain a version of normal I hadn't asked for. The footsteps approached the living room. I pressed deeper into my chair, hoping the darkness would hide me. A figure passed by the doorway, just a shadow against shadow, but the silhouette was familiar in a way that made my chest tight. The front door closed, the lock turned. I waited another hour before moving. In the morning, I found fresh flowers in a vase I didn't own, the kind my ex-spouse used to buy for special occasions. The card was blank, but I recognized the handwriting from years of grocery lists and birthday wishes. I called the officer again, explained what I'd witnessed. She asked if I wanted to press charges. I said I wasn't sure what charges to press. Breaking and entering seemed inadequate for someone who was improving my home security and stocking my refrigerator. But the more I thought about it, the more questions emerged. How long had this been going on? What else had been changed or rearranged without my knowledge? Were the missing minutes on my security footage hiding more than simple grocery runs? I started examining everything more carefully. Old photographs seemed to be arranged differently. Books I thought I'd lost reappeared on shelves. My favorite mug, chipped in the dishwasher months ago, was suddenly pristine, either repaired or replaced with an identical copy. Someone was curating my life, editing it, making small corrections to maintain an image of domestic perfection I'd never achieved on my own. The most unsettling discovery came when I found the spare key hidden exactly where it used to be during the marriage. Same hiding spot, same key ring, even the same small charm attached. I'd changed the locks 5 times, but somehow this key still worked. I tested it that evening, turned it slowly, feeling the mechanism respond like it had been waiting for this exact key all along. The door opened smoothly, no resistance, no surprise. That's when I realized the truth wasn't about someone breaking into my house. It was about someone who believed they'd never left. Crime 6, I walked out back with my coffee and nearly fell into it. A perfect hole 3 feet wide, pitch black inside. No dirt piled around it, no sign of digging. I thought it was a prank, but when I tried to measure the depth, the rope just kept going. I dropped a rock and heard nothing. I called the landlord. He said I was the only one with access to the yard. That night I dreamed of falling, waking up in a space just like mine, but reversed. The next day I found boot prints near the hole. They didn't match my shoes. The prints were fresh, pressed deep into the soft earth around the rim. Size 11, maybe 12. Work boots with a distinctive tread pattern that carved sharp diamonds into the mud. I knelt beside them, feeling the cold morning air bite at my fingers as I traced the outline. The soil felt wrong beneath my touch, too loose, too dark, like it had been disturbed and carefully smoothed back into place. I started taking pictures with my phone, documenting everything. The angle of the prints, the way they faced toward my kitchen window, the strange absence of any other disturbance in the yard. When I looked back through the lens, I noticed something else. The grass around the hole wasn't trampled or torn up like you'd expect from heavy digging equipment. Instead, it looked almost surgically cut, as if someone had taken a giant cookie cutter to my lawn. The landlord arrived within the hour, a thin man with nervous hands who kept checking his watch. He walked around the hole 3 times, never getting closer than arm's length. When I showed him the boot prints, his face went pale. He mumbled something about calling his insurance company and left before I could ask any real questions, but not before I caught him staring at the prints for a long moment, like he recognized something about them. That afternoon, I decided to canvass the neighborhood. The house to my left sat empty, a for rent sign swaying in the front yard. But the elderly woman next door remembered hearing sounds during the night. Mechanical sounds, she said, like heavy machinery running quietly. She looked out her window but saw only darkness. No lights, no movement, just the steady hum of something working in the shadows behind my house. I asked her if she'd seen anyone around my property recently. She hesitated, glancing toward my backyard before admitting that a man had been walking through the alley behind our houses for weeks, always during the day, always alone. He carried a small notebook and seemed to be measuring distances between the houses. She'd assumed he was with the city, doing some kind of survey work. The description she gave me made my stomach turn. Tall, wearing work boots, carrying what looked like surveying equipment. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she remembered his walk. Purposeful, methodical, like someone who knew exactly where he was going and what he was looking for. I spent the evening searching online for any reports of similar incidents in the area. What I found chilled me more than the hole itself. 3 houses, all within a few miles of mine, had reported mysterious excavations on their properties over the past year. Each time, the holes appeared overnight with no explanation. Each time, the property owners were told by authorities that without evidence of theft or damage, there was little that could be done. But buried in the comments section of a local news forum, I found something that made my hands shake as I read it. A user with no profile picture had posted detailed measurements of each hole, along with GPS coordinates and property records. The post was clinical, almost scientific in its precision. It read like someone was documenting their own work. I printed out the forum discussion and spread the pages across my kitchen table. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Each property sat on a corner lot with easy alley access. Each had been recently rented to single occupants with no local references. Each hole was exactly 3 feet in diameter. The realization hit me like cold water. I checked my lease agreement, my rental application, my credit report. Everything had been processed through the same property management company. The same company that had approved my application within hours of submission, despite my limited rental history in the area. I called the emergency number on my lease and got a voicemail system that sounded automated and impersonal. When I tried the main office number, it went straight to a recording saying the office was temporarily closed for renovations. The address listed on my lease led to an empty strip mall on the other side of town. Sleep became impossible. Every sound outside made me freeze, listening for the mechanical humming the neighbor had described. I kept the curtains drawn and stayed away from windows, but I could feel the hole's presence in my backyard like a wound in the earth. During the day, I found myself staring at it from my kitchen window, trying to understand what I was really looking at. On the 3rd night, I heard footsteps in the alley, slow, deliberate steps that paused directly behind my house. I crept to the back door and peered through the security peephole, but saw only darkness. The footsteps resumed, circling my property with the patience of someone conducting a thorough inspection. I grabbed a flashlight and my phone, ready to call the police, but when I looked outside again, everything was quiet, too quiet. Even the usual night sounds seemed muted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The next morning brought a new horror. The hole was wider, not by much, maybe 6 inches all around, but enough to be unmistakable. The boot prints were gone, smoothed away, but new ones had appeared. These were smaller, lighter, like someone had been walking around the expanded opening to check their work. I measured everything again, documented the changes, and tried to call the police. The desk sergeant listened politely, but explained that unless I could prove vandalism or trespassing, mysterious holes fell under civil rather than criminal jurisdiction. He suggested I contact my homeowner's insurance, seemingly unaware that I was a renter with no coverage for the property itself. Frustrated and increasingly paranoid, I decided to stay awake and watch. I set up a chair by my back window and waited, coffee growing cold in my hands as I stared into the darkness. Around what felt like the middle of the night, I saw movement near the hole. A figure in dark clothing, crouched beside the opening, working with what looked like surveying equipment. My heart hammered as I reached for my phone to record, but the screen's glow must have caught their attention. The figure straightened, turned toward my window, and stood perfectly still for a long moment. Even through the darkness, I could feel them looking directly at me. Then they gathered their equipment and disappeared into the shadows with unsettling speed. I spent the rest of the night pacing my kitchen, jumping at every sound. When dawn finally came, I rushed outside to examine the hole again. It was deeper now, and something metallic glinted at the bottom. I lay on my stomach and shined my flashlight down, trying to make out what was there. What I saw made no sense. Metal pipes arranged in a perfect grid pattern extending beyond the reach of my light. They looked like part of a larger system, something that had been built with purpose and precision. This wasn't random vandalism or even amateur excavation. This was professional work, part of something much bigger than I had imagined. I pulled up the property records online, digging deeper into the ownership history. The house had changed hands 6 times in the past 3 years, always through the same property management company. Each previous tenant had broken their lease early, citing personal reasons. None had left forwarding addresses. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. The systematic targeting of isolated renters, the professional excavation, the careful documentation by someone who seemed to be tracking their own progress. But the most disturbing realization was still coming. I found my rental application in my files and compared it to the forum posts about the other holes. The dates aligned perfectly. Each excavation had occurred within weeks of a new tenant moving in. Someone was using rental properties as cover for whatever they were building underground, choosing tenants who wouldn't be missed quickly if they disappeared. The hole in my backyard wasn't random. It was part of a pattern, and I was just the latest mark in someone's long-term project. But as I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence spread across my table, one thought kept surfacing above all the others. The boot prints I'd found that first morning had been facing toward my kitchen window, not away from the hole, but toward the house. Like someone had been standing at the edge, looking in, watching me discover their work. They wanted me to find it. Crime 7, I had just bought it, keys in hand, papers signed. It was supposed to be vacant, but when I walked through the front door, there were fresh groceries on the counter, a jacket on the hook, Music playing softly from the other room. I backed out, double-checked the address. It was right. I went back in, heart pounding. The bedroom light was on. On the bed was a notebook. On the first page, "You're the intruder now." I didn't stay long enough to check the rest. The real estate agent sounded confused when I called her. She insisted the house had been empty for months. No one had access except her and the previous owner, who had moved out of state. Her voice carried that professional uncertainty that comes when something doesn't fit the paperwork. She agreed to meet me there the next day. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept thinking about the notebook's handwriting. It was careful, deliberate, not the scrawl of someone breaking in. The groceries weren't random either. Fresh milk, organic vegetables, expensive coffee. Someone had been shopping with intention, planning to stay. When I returned with the agent, the house was different. The groceries were gone. The jacket had vanished. The music had stopped, but the notebook remained, sitting exactly where I'd seen it. The agent flipped through it, her face growing pale. Page after page of observations about the house, about the neighborhood, about me. My car, my routine, my habits. Someone had been watching me for weeks before I'd even closed on the property. The agent called the police. They took statements, dusted for fingerprints, treated it like a break-in. But something felt wrong about their questions. They kept asking about my relationship with the previous owner, about any disputes during the sale. One officer mentioned that cases like this often involved personal connections, not random strangers. I started digging into the house's history. The previous owner had lived there for decades, raised a family, lost a spouse. The records showed a straightforward sale, no liens, no complications. But when I tried to contact him, his phone was disconnected. The forwarding address led to a post office box that had been closed. The neighbors began sharing stories. They'd seen lights in the house during the supposedly empty months. A woman walking through the yard, watering plants that weren't there when I'd toured the property. Someone had been maintaining the place, keeping it lived in while it was legally vacant. I found old mail in the basement, stuffed behind the water heater. Bills addressed to someone who wasn't the previous owner, wasn't me. The name meant nothing to me, but the handwriting matched the notebook. The person who'd written, "You're the intruder now," had been receiving mail at my house for years. When I brought this to the police, their interest shifted. They started asking different questions about my background check, my financial records, my references. One detective suggested I might be dealing with identity theft, that someone could have used my information to establish residence at the house before I'd even known it was for sale. The notebook contained more than observations. There were floor plans, detailed measurements, notes about which windows stuck and which doors didn't lock properly. Someone had mapped every inch of the house with the familiarity of someone who belonged there. The final entry was dated just hours before I'd first walked through the door. I hired a private investigator. She discovered that the house had been listed and sold twice in the past year, both times to buyers who'd backed out at the last minute. Both had reported finding evidence of occupancy in what was supposed to be an empty house. The pattern suggested someone was deliberately sabotaging sales, keeping the house available for their own use. The breakthrough came when I found the key. Hidden in the garden shed, hanging on a hook behind old tools, was a duplicate house key. It was old, worn smooth by years of use. Attached to it was a tag with an address across town. When I drove there, I found an apartment building. The superintendent confirmed that the name from the mail had lived there, but had moved out months ago, leaving no forwarding address. The apartment had been rented under a false identity. The references were fake, the credit history manufactured. Someone had created an entire fictional person to establish tenancy, then disappeared when the lease expired. The timing matched exactly with when the disturbances at my house had begun. But the deeper I dug, the more complicated it became. The false identity traces back to documents that were too perfect, too complete. Someone with access to official records, someone who understood how to create a person on paper, the kind of expertise that comes from working within the system. I started noticing things about the real estate agent, how she'd known exactly where to look for the notebook, how she'd seemed unsurprised by what we'd found, how her explanations always had just enough detail to sound convincing, but never quite enough to verify. When I tried to research her credentials, I found gaps in her employment history that coincided with the mysterious occupancy of my house. The police investigation stalled. They classified it as civil matter, suggested I pursue it through my insurance company. But insurance doesn't cover mysteries. It doesn't pay for the feeling that someone has been living in your space, breathing your air, planning their next move while you sleep in a different bed. I still live in the house. The locks have been changed, security system installed, every window secured. But sometimes I find things that weren't there before. A glass moved in the kitchen. A book opened to a page I didn't leave it on. Small things that could be explained by memory, by distraction, by the settling of an old house. The notebook sits in my safe now, but I've memorized every page. The handwriting has become familiar, like recognizing a voice. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if the person who wrote it is still watching, still taking notes, still considering me the intruder in what they considered their home. The real estate agent still calls occasionally, asking how I'm settling in, whether I need any recommendations for contractors or services. Her voice is always pleasant, professional, concerned, but there's something underneath it now, a quality I didn't notice before, like she's asking about more than just my satisfaction with the purchase. I never did find out who created that false identity, who had been living in my house, who wrote those careful observations about my life. The case remains open but inactive, filed away with dozens of other unexplained incidents that don't fit neat categories. The police assured me that whoever it was has moved on, found another empty house, another unsuspecting buyer. But I know better. You don't watch someone that carefully, document their life that thoroughly, just to disappear completely. You don't create an entire false identity just to abandon it. You don't write, "You're the intruder now," unless you plan to do something about it. The truth is, I think they're still here, not in the house, but close enough. Still watching, still taking notes, still planning something I can't quite understand. And the worst part is I'm starting to think I know who they are. Crime 8, I bought it at a garage sale. Old, cracked, maybe antique. But when I hung it up, something felt off. The reflection wasn't exact. My movements were delayed just barely. Then it started showing things I hadn't done. I'd glance at it and see myself holding a knife or walking into the basement or opening drawers I hadn't touched. It escalated. One night the reflection smiled when I didn't. It picked something up behind me, something I knew wasn't in the room. I tried to cover the mirror, but the sheet slid off by itself. Now when I pass it, I never look straight in. That's what she told me, word for word. Her hands were shaking when she said it, fingers wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone cold an hour ago. The detective assigned to the case had asked me to speak with her. Professional courtesy, he said, someone who might understand the psychological aspects better than he could. Her name doesn't matter now. What matters is what happened next. She lived alone in a house that smelled like lavender and old paper, the kind of place where dust settles in corners and stays there for years. When I walked through her front door, I noticed the mirror immediately. It was gone, but the outline remained on the wall, a pale rectangle where the paint hadn't faded like the rest. The case had started 3 weeks earlier. Her neighbor, an elderly man who lived across the street, had been found dead in his kitchen. Natural causes, the coroner said, heart attack, but she had called the police anyway, insisting something was wrong. She had seen things, she told them, things that didn't make sense. I sat across from her in her living room, notepad in my lap, trying to understand why a routine death had become my problem. She kept glancing toward the wall where the mirror used to hang. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, like someone trying very hard not to panic. "Tell me about the mirror again," I said. She closed her eyes. I bought it at his sale. He was selling everything before he moved to that retirement home upstate, except he never made it there, did he? The timeline was simple enough. The old man had decided to downsize. Garage sale on a weekend. She bought the mirror. 2 days later he was dead, but timelines don't explain everything. "What did you see in it?" "Myself, but not myself." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw myself walking across the street at night. I saw myself standing in his kitchen. I saw myself going through his medicine cabinet. I wrote this down, though I wasn't sure why. Did you ever actually do those things?" "No, too quick, too certain." I spent the afternoon going through the police report. The neighbor had died alone, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of foul play, but there were inconsistencies. His medication was scattered on the kitchen counter, pills mixed together in a way that suggested someone had been looking through them. The back door was unlocked, though his daughter swore he always kept it locked, and there were muddy footprints on the kitchen floor, size 7 women's shoes. She wore size 7. When I came back to her house that evening, she was waiting for me. The smell of lavender was stronger now, almost overwhelming. She had been cleaning, she said, getting rid of things that reminded her of the mirror. "I need to show you something," she said. In her basement, behind boxes of Christmas decorations and old tax returns, she had hidden a bag. Inside were pill bottles, dozens of them, all with the neighbor's name on the labels. Heart medication, blood thinners, insulin. Some were empty, others were nearly full. "I found these after he died," she said. "In my kitchen. I don't know how they got there." But I was beginning to understand. The mirror hadn't shown her what she might do. It had shown her what she had already done and forgotten, or chosen not to remember. The human mind protects itself in strange ways. Trauma, guilt, shame, they can create gaps in memory, pockets of time that simply disappear. She had befriended the old man during his final months. She had a key to his house, helped him with groceries and medication. She knew his routines, his vulnerabilities, his weaknesses. What she didn't remember was the night she decided he had suffered enough. The pills made it easy. A handful of heart medication mixed with blood thinners dissolved in his evening tea, enough to stop an old heart that was already failing. He would have felt tired, maybe confused, then nothing, like falling asleep. She had cleaned up afterward, taken the extra pills, locked the back door, but not perfectly, never perfectly. The mind that forgets can't remember all the details that need to be covered. "The mirror," I said, "when did you really break it?" She looked at me with eyes that were suddenly very clear, after I realized what it was showing me wasn't the future. I never turned in my report. There wasn't enough evidence for a conviction, and the old man was already gone. Sometimes mercy looks like letting sleeping dogs lie. Sometimes it looks like letting an old woman live with what her mind had tried so hard to forget. But I think about that mirror often, about the things we refuse to see even when they're staring back at us, about the stories we tell ourselves to make the unbearable bearable, about the difference between justice and truth and why they're not always the same thing. She moved away shortly after our last conversation, sold the house, left no forwarding address. I heard she donated all her furniture to charity before she left, everything except what was already gone. The mirror, wherever it ended up, probably hangs in someone else's house now, reflecting someone else's secrets, someone else's carefully forgotten truths. I wonder what they see when they look into it. I wonder if they look at all. Crime 9, I don't get much mail, mostly junk, but lately I've been finding handwritten notes inside. Don't go alone, check the second drawer. Someone lives in your attic. I thought it was a prank. Then the drawer mentioned actually had a burner phone inside. It rang once, no number, no message, then silence. I tried reporting it. The police said no crime was committed, but now the notes are more specific. They know what I wear, what I eat. The last one said, "We're done warning, watch the footage." There was a USB drive in the box. I haven't opened it yet. The weight of that small device feels wrong in my palm. Too heavy for something so insignificant, yet too light to carry whatever truth it holds. I set it on my kitchen table next to my coffee, watching steam rise from the cup while my hands refused to stop trembling. The handwriting on today's note was different, sharper, more urgent, like someone had pressed the pen so hard it nearly tore through the paper. I've been living in this house for 3 years. Quiet neighborhood, the kind where people wave from their driveways and complain about lawn care. Nothing ever happens here. Yet someone has been watching me closely enough to know I wore my blue jacket on Tuesday, that I bought eggs and bread from the corner store, that I always checked my mail before I unlocked my front door. The precision of their knowledge makes my skin crawl. The burner phone sits in my junk drawer, silent now for days. I've checked it obsessively, waiting for another call that never comes. The screen is cracked like it's been dropped or thrown. When I found it, there were dried stains on the case. Could have been coffee, could have been something else. I didn't want to look too closely. I started photographing every note. The paper is always the same, cheap notebook pages torn carelessly. But the pens change. Blue ink, black ink, pencil, marker, like different people are taking turns, or like someone is trying very hard to make it look that way. The earliest notes were almost childish, with loops and curves that reminded me of elementary school handwriting. The recent ones are blocky, aggressive, written by someone who doesn't want to be gentle anymore. My neighbor mentioned seeing a utility van parked across the street several nights this week. Said the workers looked like they were checking the power lines, but they never actually climbed the poles. Just sat there with the engine running, windows tinted too dark to see inside. When I asked what company, she couldn't remember seeing any logos. That detail bothers me more than it should. I've been retracing my steps, trying to figure out when this started. The first note appeared 3 weeks ago, tucked between credit card offers and grocery store flyers. I almost threw it away without reading it. Don't go alone. Go where? I live alone, work alone, eat most of my meals alone. The warning felt like a cruel joke about my isolation rather than genuine concern. But then came the second note. Check the second drawer. I have a desk in my bedroom with 4 drawers. The second one from the top contained old bills, rubber bands, and apparently a phone I'd never seen before. Someone had been inside my house. Someone had planted evidence and then told me exactly where to find it. The violation felt deeper than theft. They wanted me to know they could reach me anywhere. The footage they mentioned, I know I have to watch it eventually, but part of me suspects I already know what I'll see. The gaps in my memory have been bothering me for weeks, waking up on the couch when I remember going to bed upstairs, finding dishes in the sink that I don't recall using, small things that I attributed to stress or distraction, but now feel deliberately erased. I called my sister yesterday, testing a theory, asked if she remembered me mentioning any strange incidents recently. She got quiet, then asked if I was feeling all right. Said I'd called her last week, rambling about someone following me, but when she tried to get details, I'd hung up abruptly. I have no memory of that conversation, none at all. The USB drive has been sitting here for hours now, and I can feel its presence like a weight pressing against my chest. My laptop is right there, sleeping, waiting. But once I see what's on that drive, I can't unsee it. Once I know, I'll have to decide what to do with that knowledge. And based on everything that's happened so far, I'm not sure I'll like the person I discover in that footage. The handwriting analysis I did myself, comparing all the notes side by side, revealed something disturbing. The variations in penmanship follow a pattern. They're not random attempts at disguise, they're consistent personalities. Note 1 and Note 7 have identical letter formations. Notes 3, 5, and 9 share the same pressure patterns. Either I'm dealing with a group of people who are very organized about their deception, or someone who has practiced multiple handwriting styles until they became second nature. But there's another possibility I haven't wanted to consider. The timeline of the notes corresponds almost perfectly with the gaps in my memory. What if the warnings aren't coming from strangers? What if I'm the one who's been leaving myself these messages, trying to communicate across periods of blackout? The thought makes me nauseous, but it would explain how the note writer knows such intimate details about my daily routine. The footage will tell me everything. It has to. Whether I'm the victim of an elaborate stalking campaign or something far worse, evidence of my own fractured mind documenting crimes I can't remember committing. Either way, the person I am right now, sitting in this kitchen, afraid to plug in a USB drive, will cease to exist once I learn the truth. I can hear my neighbor's dog barking in the distance, a sound that used to comfort me. Now it feels like a warning I'm not equipped to understand. My coffee has gone cold, and the USB drive seems to pulse with malevolent energy in the afternoon light streaming through my kitchen window. I reach for my laptop. Story 10, hidden in the depths of the attic beneath layers of dust and time, lay an old box, a silent witness to the passage of years, a repository of memories long forgotten. Within its weathered confines were remnants of days gone by, captured in faded Polaroids that whispered tales of laughter and love. Birthdays, family reunion scenes of ordinary joy, frozen in time. Yet amidst the familiar smiles and shared moments, one photograph stood apart, shrouded in mystery and unease. In that final picture, taken within the walls of her own home, Rebecca found a family that was not her own. A family of strangers, their faces frozen in blissful ignorance, while a shadowy figure loomed in the background, a silent observer, a spectral presence in the dimly lit hallway. As her fingers traced the edges of the trembling photograph, a chill crept up Rebecca's spine, casting a pall over the once familiar surroundings. Descending the worn wooden stairs, each creak a lament for the solitude that engulfed her, Rebecca brought the enigmatic photo into the harsh light of the kitchen. The eerie resemblance between her home and the unknown family's setting sent shivers down her spine, a disquieting realization that blurred the boundaries between reality and the unknown. Enter Detective Morgan, a man of few words, clad in a jacket weathered by the passage of time and the weight of unsolved mysteries. With a keen eye and a steady hand, he delved into the enigma that had taken root within the walls of Rebecca's home. The journey into the past began, unraveling a tapestry of vanished families, each leaving behind unanswered questions and a void in the fabric of time. The trail led back through the annals of the house's history, unveiling a pattern of disappearances that spanned generations. Families came and went, leaving no trace but echoes of their presence, until the Sutherlands, a family lost to the shadows, their fate a haunting enigma that defied explanation. Forensic analysis shed light on the Polaroid, revealing hidden truths in the minutiae of the image. A timer set, a moment captured in eerie stillness, and a figure lurking in the periphery, a specter of the past, a harbinger of unseen forces at play. As the investigation deepened, a name echoed through the corridors of time: Samuel Whitfield, a spectral presence whose legacy cast a long shadow over the house he had built. A man of mystery, a figure of intrigue, his connection to the vanished families an enigma that defied rational explanation. Beneath the cold concrete of the basement, a chilling discovery awaited: a chamber of secrets, a tomb of lost souls. The missing families, preserved in eternal slumber, their silent voices a testament to the darkness that lurked within the house's walls. Rebecca's world unraveled, a tapestry of lies and half-truths woven by unseen hands. A hidden crawlspace, a journal of chilling observations, and a sinister plan unfolding in the shadows, a web of deceit that threatened to ensnare her in its malevolent grasp. As night fell and the shadows deepened, a sinister presence made itself known: a whisper in the darkness, a click of a camera, a spectral echo of a past that refused to stay buried. The line between reality and nightmare blurred as Rebecca found herself hunted by forces beyond her understanding. The house stood silent, a sentinel of secrets, its windows dark and its corridors haunted by the ghosts of the past. Samuel Whitfield remained a phantom, a specter of darkness that defied capture, his legacy a stain on the fabric of time. And so the tale continues, a mystery unsolved, a riddle without end. In the darkened room where photographs develop, new families smile in ignorance, unaware of the watcher in the shadows, a legacy of fear and uncertainty that lingers, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. Story 11. The aged apartment possessed its idiosyncrasies: pipes that groaned, floorboards that whispered secrets of yesteryears. Yet the new tenant sensed a discord in the familiar cacophony. The footsteps, deliberate and unwavering, echoed from above, despite her dwelling on the topmost floor. One fateful night, she summoned the courage to tap the broomstick against the ceiling. The sound halted abruptly, plunging the space into an eerie hush. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the very ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the unnerving incident shrouded in silence. Rationalizations danced in her mind, the settling of the time-worn edifice, or perhaps a critter straying into the attic realm. Despite the nightly ritual of methodical footfalls traversing her ceiling, she adapted, cranking up the television volume, donning headphones to muffle the haunting echoes that traversed her abode in the obsidian cloak of night. Detective Morris's introduction to the apartment unfolded when a maintenance worker unearthed a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. While rectifying a water leak outside Sarah's dwelling, the worker exposed a clandestine passage that defied the building's blueprints. Illuminated by his flashlight, the narrow crevice divulged a makeshift abode: discarded food wrappers, empty water vessels, a soiled coverlet, and a weathered notebook. Swiftly, the building's superintendent summoned the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, encountered the quivering maintenance worker, his complexion ashen. "Someone dwelt within the walls," he muttered, his voice a tremulous whisper. "Someone watched." The notebook chronicled meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman's routines, visitors, culinary choices, viewing habits, bathing hours, and sleep patterns. The script, initially orderly, descended into chaos on the final pages, marred by cryptic symbols etched in the margins. "The subject defies my signals," the conclusive entry lamented. "She dares to ignore me. None may ignore me." Forensic teams meticulously combed the crawlspace, unearthing fingerprints devoid of matches in any database. A labyrinthine network of passages interwoven within the walls and ceilings of the building, some with origins dating back eons, was unveiled. These conduits branched into 5 distinct apartments, converging upon viewing apertures camouflaged as fixtures or innocuous blemishes, yet only one led to Sarah Coleman's dwelling. Interrogations of current residents bore no fruit, their accounts aligning with commonplace apartment commotions. However, former inhabitants painted a starkly different narrative. 3 previous tenants of Sarah's abode recounted sensations of being surveilled or unexplained disturbances. One vacated after a mere fortnight, their experiences cloaked in silence lest they be deemed paranoid. A breakthrough materialized as forensics pinpointed minuscule blood specks within a crawlspace. DNA analysis traced the fragments to Martin Weaver, a former resident vanishing without a trace 4 years prior. Martin had inhabited the flat directly beneath Sarah's abode. Delving into Martin's disappearance anew, Detective Morris unraveled a tale of grievances regarding noises emanating from above, culminating in a confrontation with the tenant, a reclusive figure named Edward. Following Martin's disappearance, Edward absconded, leaving no forwarding address. Tracing Edward's nomadic rental history unraveled a chilling pattern. Across 2 decades, he gravitated towards top-floor abodes, forged scant social connections, and evaporated without ado. An acquaintance from his 3rd residence recounted Edward's intensity and relentless pursuit of silence. Investigations unveiled Edward's acquisition of remote rural acreage, harboring a cabin adorned with unsettling paraphernalia. Photographs of denizens from various apartment complexes, including Sarah and Martin, adorned the walls, alongside meticulous records mapping ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities. Detailed journals chronicled specimen observations and habitat maintenance. A corkboard showcased missing persons reports, 6 of them a grisly testament to Edward's malevolent orchestrations. Cadaver dogs unearthed freshly disturbed earth behind the cabin, unearthing human remains in a grim procession. As forensic anthropologists toiled to unveil the victims' identities, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's abode. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, murmurs of enigmatic noises persisted. During the installation of enhanced security systems, a solitary discovery emerged: a second notebook concealed in a crevice where the ceiling met the wall. Fresh in its pages, a chilling inscription loomed: "They found my previous lair, yet my new haven remains concealed." The writing mirrored the antecedent journal, concluding with a crude depiction of Sarah's floor plan, embellished with a crimson trail marking a new passage and a date tonight. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, but her sanctuary stood deserted. Her phone lay abandoned on the counter, the television emitting a ghostly glow. Within the bathroom, mist shrouded the mirror, gradually revealing a harrowing message etched by a phantom finger: "Look up." Above the shower, the ceiling panel had been displaced, a harbinger of lurking dread. The pursuit of Edward, now unmasked as Edward Mercer, former construction artisan specializing in renovations, continues. His expertise in structural intricacies underpinned his clandestine network of surveillance points and conduits. Thermal scans of Sarah's abode yielded no traces of present occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains an enigma, her tale entwined with vanishing acts spanning multiple states. Warnings have been disseminated to apartment managers regarding unauthorized modifications and concealed recesses. Yet the specter that haunts Detective Morris transcends the morbid tableau of graves and journals. It's the echo of Sarah, ensnared in a nightly dance with phantom footfalls from an ethereal neighbor. The footsteps that reciprocated her knocks etching a chilling symphony of solitude. And sometimes, amidst nocturnal solitude, Detective Morris gazes skyward at his own abode, attuned to the enigmatic serenade echoing in the nocturnal stillness, wondering who else might be listening, waiting in the shadows. Story 12. In the quiet of the night, a subtle flicker danced on the baby monitor screen, catching the attention of a mother resting in her bed. At first, she brushed it off as a mere glitch, a fleeting interruption in the feed. But then the air filled with static, and a soft voice, barely above a whisper, drifted through the room, saying, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine, her heart quickening its pace as she recognized the unsettling intrusion. With a sense of dread gripping her, she hurried to her son's room, the floorboards creaking beneath her frantic steps. Upon reaching the nursery, she found the crib empty, the covers undisturbed. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly was a plush rabbit lying on the floor, its unblinking black eyes fixed on her with an eerie intensity. In a frenzy of fear and disbelief, Rebecca's screams pierced the stillness of the night until her voice grew hoarse, her anguish echoing through the walls and reaching the ears of concerned neighbors. Emergency services were summoned, and as they arrived, they found her huddled on the nursery floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest, lost in a world of bewildering sorrow. The disappearance of her 4-month-old son, Samuel, left a void that no explanation could fill. The initial investigation yielded more questions than answers. No signs of forced entry marred the home. The security system stood undisturbed. The baby monitor footage, tainted by that haunting voice, offered no clear clues except for the unsettling presence that had invaded their sanctuary. Suspicions began to swirl around Rebecca, her past struggles with postpartum depression, and the strained dynamics within her marriage to Daniel, who had been away on a business trip during the night of Samuel's disappearance. The community's whispers painted her as the likely culprit, a grieving mother caught in a web of suspicion. Then a glimmer of hope emerged as forensic experts uncovered microscopic fibers of a rare climbing rope on the nursery windowsill, hinting at a possible point of entry from the outside. The focus shifted, revealing a shadowy figure captured by neighboring security cameras, a figure adept at moving unseen in the night. As Daniel returned, his hands bearing telltale calluses from a newfound rock climbing hobby, the investigators' attention turned towards him. Financial records unveiled a troubling narrative, a substantial life insurance policy on Samuel, mysterious phone calls leading up to the abduction, and a hidden second family in a distant community unbeknownst to Rebecca. The unraveling of the case exposed a web of deceit woven with precision and malice. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, became a tool of manipulation. Through digital forensics, the truth emerged: the voice that had whispered in the darkness had been a remote intrusion, a cruel deception orchestrated from afar. In a chilling revelation, Samuel was found alive in a residential basement, cared for by a woman named Elaine, who bore a haunting connection to Daniel's past. Elaine, haunted by loss and obsession, had carried out the abduction in a misguided quest to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom hushed to a solemn silence as the enhanced audio from the baby monitor played, revealing not just the whispered words that had shattered Rebecca's world, but also the unmistakable cough of Daniel, placing him at the heart of the orchestrated crime. In the end, justice prevailed, but scars lingered, a family fractured, lives forever altered. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The echoes of that fateful night reverberated through the community, a stark reminder of the darkness that could lurk behind the facade of familiarity. And as the world learned of the sinister tale that unfolded, parents everywhere held their loved ones a little closer, the vulnerability of innocence seared into their consciousness. The baby monitor, once a silent sentinel, now stood as a testament to the fragility of trust, its truth-bearing gaze a reminder of the price of vigilance in a world where even the whispers of the night could hold untold dangers. Story 13. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints were void of any indication of its existence. Yet beneath the worn carpet, concealed from view, a door awaited discovery by the unsuspecting family. A weathered handle, heavy with neglect, required the combined effort of three to wrench it open. As the door yielded, a gust of musty air, pregnant with the aroma of damp soil, enveloped them. Descending steps beckoned into the abyss below. Anticipating storage space, they instead encountered a solitary chair bathed in the gentle sway of a lone light bulb. Adorning the wall behind it, a series of photographs depicting them, images stolen from the confines of their own home. The Mercers had settled into the suburban abode amidst the winter chill, when twilight descended prematurely, shrouding the neighborhood trees in barren silhouettes against the frigid heavens. The aging two-story dwelling, with its weathered facade and echoing floorboards, exuded character, or so they had convinced themselves. Character and history. Little did they foresee the depth of history the house harbored, or the violent collision it would have with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene alongside her partner, the crime scene unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's quivering voice had relayed the unsettling discovery concealed beneath their own living space. "We must document every detail before anyone else ventures down," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with a seasoned ease. Staccato flashes of the camera illuminated the stairwell as the forensic team meticulously captured the scene. Each creak of the wooden steps echoed their descent. The compact basement, akin to a standard bedroom in size, boasted concrete walls painted a dreary gray. The secured chair occupied the room's center, beneath the harsh glare of the solitary bulb, casting dancing shadows from an unseen breeze. Yet it was the chronological array of 37 photographs that seized their attention. "These date back almost 4 weeks," Connor's partner remarked, scrutinizing the timestamps inscribed on the back of each print. "Observe this one, Mrs. Mercer dozing on the sofa, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their chambers. The absence of forced entry, shattered windows, or tampered locks perplexed the investigators. The dormant security system had never been triggered. Nothing had been pilfered, save for their privacy and the illusion of safety." Forensic analysis unveiled multiple fingerprints within the basement, predominantly belonging to past proprietors of the residence. Historical records divulged 6 successive changes of ownership within the last decade, each family departing within a year, selling at plummeting values. None had disclosed the existence of a basement. "We must interrogate every previous owner," Connors mandated, paging through her notepad. The case assumed a disquieting hue as they traced the residence's lineage in reverse. Property documentation unveiled discrepancies, blueprints altered between transactions, permits submitted then revoked, inspection reports redacted in entirety. A breakthrough emerged during an interview with the contractor who had refurbished the property 7 years prior. His complexion drained upon glimpsing the basement photographs. "That chamber is non-existent," he asserted, hands trembling. "I gutted the place down to its foundation. No basement, no door, nothing beneath the living area except soil and concrete." A memory card concealed within a light fixture yielded a trove of additional images, adorning their evidence boards not solely of the Mercers, but of preceding families. Children slumbering, parents disputing, intimate moments, mundane rituals, all surreptitiously captured by an unwelcome voyeur. The investigation plunged into murkier depths upon recovering audio files from a weatherproof crate nestled in the basement's corner. Voice recordings of conversations transpiring within the master bedroom, kitchen, and living room reverberated through the investigators. The audio's quality hinted at sophisticated microphones surreptitiously positioned throughout the house, though none were unearthed during the initial sweep. "We must dismantle every wall," Connors commanded with a taut urgency. "Inspect the air ducts, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years." Concealed behind the photograph-laden wall, investigators stumbled upon a narrow passageway leading to a diminutive monitoring station. A desk, a chair, a laptop linked to an array of wireless cameras, and a journal, its pages brimming with meticulous observations on each family that had resided within the dwelling, their routines, their schedules, their conflicts, their vulnerabilities. The script mirrored samples from the original builder of the property, a man christened Edward Kelvin. Official records indicated his demise during the house's construction, a detail shrouded in suspicion as the inquiry advanced. No death certificate had been archived, no funeral arrangements orchestrated. Edward Kelvin had seemingly vanished from public records. The final entries within the journal descended into incoherence. Phrases such as "they never glance below" and "they never perceive me" recurred tirelessly. The conclusive page bore a solitary declaration: "The subsequent family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint scrutiny validated the investigators' burgeoning suspicions. Edward Kelvin had never vacated the dwelling he had erected. Instead, he had retreated into its clandestine recesses, crafting a labyrinth of observation points from which to scrutinize the families who believed themselves solitary inhabitants. The manhunt extended over 3 days. They unearthed him curled within a crawl space amid the second-floor chambers, his physique lean and sinewy, attuned to navigating the narrow passages he had fashioned within the walls. Blinking against the stark beams of the flashlights, his eyes struggled to acclimate to the direct luminescence. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as if they were dramatis personae in his private theater. He delineated their lives with the clinical dispassion of a scientist evaluating specimens. He had refrained from physical contact, theft, or direct interference in their lives. He had merely observed, recorded, chronicled. "They welcomed me in," he confided to the investigators, his tone gentle and rational. "They signed the deeds, they became mine." A psychological evaluation diagnosed Kelvin with severe delusions, perceiving himself as the custodian of the residence rather than an intruder. The families were transient guests in what he perceived as his perennial abode. The Mercer family never revisited the property. Like their predecessors, they deserted their possessions, salvaging only essentials in satchels. The house languished uninhabited as the legal proceedings unfolded. The trial unveiled the full expanse of Kelvin's surveillance network, hidden chambers accessible solely through crawl spaces, observation points interwoven into the edifice itself, all meticulously orchestrated prior to the initial brick being laid. When the jury rendered their judgment, Kelvin remained impassive. He had already retreated into the mazes of his consciousness, where he could traverse unseen through the passageways of the dwelling that now existed solely in memory. Ultimately, the property succumbed to demolition, its subterranean secrets excavated and obliterated. Yet, for the families who had dwelled within, the violation persisted. They grappled not with what had been purloined from them, but with what had lurked unbeknownst to them, watching, eavesdropping, recording their most intimate moments from within the walls they had entrusted for protection. Occasionally, in hushed instants, they found themselves casting furtive glances at air ducts, light fixtures, and the junctures where walls melded with ceilings, pondering whether they were truly unaccompanied now, pondering whether they ever had been. Story 14. The old house had been abandoned for what seemed like an eternity. Whispers from the neighbors hinted that no soul had inhabited its walls since the mysterious disappearance of a young woman. When the new occupants crossed the threshold, they encountered a peculiar sight: the bedroom door stubbornly locked from within. With determination, they forced it open, revealing a room cloaked in the veil of neglect, the air thick with the weight of time. Yet, amidst the stagnant air, something felt awry. The bed stood neatly made, the mirror devoid of dust. A lone candle, extinguished and forlorn, had dripped its wax in silent sorrow, like tears frozen in time. And then the discovery: the notebook, its pages open to a realm of fresh ink, telling a tale untold. Detective Morgan delved into the notebook's secrets, while forensic experts meticulously combed the room for fingerprints and clues. The meticulous script belonged to Elise Winters, a young woman of 26, reported missing by her grieving parents nearly 5 years prior. Her writing danced across the pages with precision and grace, until the final entry etched with a sense of urgency. "I know he's watching me tonight," the haunting words revealed. "The same car has circled thrice. I've reached out for aid, but my pleas fall on deaf ears. If fate should befall me, know it was no happenstance." As the detective closed the book, sealing its secrets within the confines of an evidence bag, a subtle scent lingered in the room, a blend of dust and an elusive chemical essence. The landlord, his countenance pallid, stood at the threshold, a silent witness to the unfolding mystery. "We checked every nook ere listing it for rent," he mumbled, a tremor in his voice. "That door should not have been sealed shut." Elise had toiled as a paralegal at Harriman and Associates, a renowned law firm embroiled in high-stakes corporate affairs. Colleagues painted a portrait of a meticulous and dedicated young woman whose demeanor had shifted in the days leading to her vanishing act. She lingered after hours, her supervisor recounted to the investigators, whispered of discrepancies within the Westridge acquisition files, numbers altered, documents falsified. The detective pored over photographs of Elise, a vision of grace with auburn tresses and eyes that held a world of secrets behind spectacles. The woman immortalized in those frames seemed too composed to dissolve into the shadows, too methodical to vanish without a trace. The bedroom yielded scant clues: a pristine tableau frozen in time, devoid of chaos or bloodshed. A solitary candle, its scentless wax a silent witness to a moment suspended in eternity. "What revelations have you unearthed?" Morgan inquired of the forensic lead. "A myriad of aged fingerprints with notable absences. The doorknob and window latches wiped clean of any trace," came the response. The investigative team probed beneath floorboards, behind outlets, seeking hidden truths. And beneath a loose plank near the closet, a whisper of hidden secrets awaited: a waterproof case cradling a flash drive and a key. The key unfurled a mystery at Northern Trust Bank, unveiling a trove of digital secrets. The hidden drives bore witness to clandestine dealings between Westridge Pharmaceuticals and vested interests at Harriman and Associates. Audio snippets and spreadsheets exposed the dark underbelly of corporate deceit, shedding light on manipulated drug trials and concealed side effects of Neuropax, the flagship medication. Elise's voice interwove with that of Vincent Harriman, the firm's senior partner, in a symphony of treachery and betrayal. Pharmaceutical regulators affirmed the withdrawal of Neuropax from the market, aligning patient fatalities with Elise's covert revelations. Subpoenaed records hinted at Harriman's guilt, his ties to an industrial cleanup post Elise's disappearance a damning echo of nefarious deeds. The web of deceit unraveled, linking the missing woman to a web of deceit and treachery. The enigma of the sealed room persisted until security footage shed light on a fateful night. Harriman's silhouette, captured in the downpour on the eve of Elise's vanishing, painted a damning portrait. The figure slipped into the house, yet never emerged, a puzzle unsolved until Detective Morgan and an engineer unveiled a hidden passageway, a portal to shadows beneath the neighborhood's facade. Vincent Harriman faced justice amid a storm of accusations. His protestations of innocence crumbled under the weight of Elise's silent witness, a camera secreted within her sanctum, capturing his sinister approach and her untimely demise. The court's gavel echoed a verdict of guilt, sealing Harriman's fate behind bars. As daylight filtered through the curtains of justice, Elise's mother stood before the court, her voice a whisper of remembrance. My daughter's chamber held the key to truth, a truth she sacrificed all to unveil. In that room she lingered still, her legacy a beacon for justice seekers. The new occupants shunned the house, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. A light flickered in the upstairs window, a ghostly reminder of a woman's valiant stand against the shadows of power. Elise's tale, a saga of sacrifice and revelation, echoed in the silent chambers of the vacant abode, a testament to justice served from beyond the grave. Story 15: The Unearthed Warning. Renovations always have a way of unraveling hidden mysteries, revealing forgotten relics of the past. Amidst the dust and debris, Sarah and Michael stumbled upon a peculiar find as they lifted the floorboards of their newly acquired Victorian-era home. Nestled beneath the aged wood lay a carefully folded letter, its paper yellowed with time, its ink faded but its words sharp. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could process the cryptic message, 3 distinct knocks reverberated through the silent house, sending shivers down their spines. Intrigued and unnerved, they summoned Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the enigmatic. Reed arrived with her partner, the floorboards still gaping, revealing a dark void beneath. With methodical precision, she extracted the fragile note, bearing witness to its eerie contents. The couple's inadvertent touch had tainted the evidence, but Reed's instincts remained sharp as she delved into the unfolding mystery. Background checks on Sarah and Michael unveiled nothing amiss, a happy couple with solid backgrounds. However, the house harbored a shadowy past. Once owned by the reclusive Hargrove family, the property had stood vacant since the passing of its last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly widow with no known enemies or suspicious circumstances surrounding her demise. Forensic analysis dated the unsettling note back 2 decades, hinting at a time of distress and fear. Franklin, Margaret's late husband, a respected teacher turned recluse, held the key to the dark secrets buried within the house's walls. Reed's investigation unearthed unsettling truths as she pieced together fragments of the past. Franklin's descent into paranoia, fueled by mounting gambling debts and a menacing collector known as Victor Mercer, shed light on the grim events that had unfolded within the once tranquil home. Margaret's whispered confessions to her sister hinted at a looming danger, the relentless 3 knocks of the collector, a harbinger of dread that sealed Franklin's fate and entombed Victor Mercer beneath the house's foundation. As the forensic team meticulously combed through the hidden recesses of the property, the chilling truth gradually emerged. The remains of Victor Mercer, the elusive collector, surfaced, bringing closure to a long-buried chapter of deceit and tragedy. Margaret's diaries, concealed in the attic, chronicled her descent into fear and isolation, haunted by phantom knocks that echoed through the empty halls long after the perpetrators had met their demise. The house, tainted by its dark history, stood as a silent witness to the unsolved mysteries that lingered within its walls. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of its secrets, relinquished the property, leaving it abandoned and echoing with whispers of the past. Local whispers spoke of spectral echoes, three distinct knocks that pierced the stillness of the night, a reminder of the chilling warning inscribed in the forgotten note, "Don't trust the one who knocked." Detective Reed closed the case with a heavy heart, acknowledging that some mysteries defy resolution, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease and unanswered questions. The legacy of Margaret Hargrove and the enigmatic warning she left behind remained etched in the shadows of the vacant house, a testament to the enduring power of secrets untold. Story 16. It began with a pocket dial, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds that almost went unnoticed by the operator. But then a voice emerged from the abyss, an urgent, frantic whisper of a woman saying, "He's here." And then silence enveloped the line once more. The number traced back to an empty house, a relic of abandonment for years on end. No signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the stillness of the air. Yet in the kitchen, layered with a veil of dust, there sat a phone upon the counter, its screen softly aglow. The call had been placed just moments before. Detective Morgan Reed found herself entranced by the playback button, pressing it for the 5th time, each whisper echoing in her mind, desperate, terror-stricken, and utterly impossible. The forsaken property had once belonged to the Sullivan family, who fled after a fire devoured the west wing of their home. No soul had dwelled within those walls since. The caretaker attested to monthly visits, claiming no intrusion had occurred in years. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The response came swiftly, "Registered to Catherine Sullivan, the departed daughter. She met her end 3 years past in a car mishap." As Morgan gazed at the evidence bag harboring the phone, the puzzle before her appeared nonsensical. A deceased woman's phone, emitting calls from a forsaken abode. The dust on the counter perturbed solely beneath the phone, as though it had manifested there. The forensic team uncovered no substantial leads, no fingerprints save for enigmatic smudges, no footprints to trace. The doors remained locked, the windows sealed shut. The heart of their inquiry became the recording itself, those 11 seconds of static, of breaths woven with 5 words of urgency. Voice analysis affirmed a 98% match to Catherine Sullivan's timbre from ancient recordings. The timestamp aligned precisely with the moment of her passing 3 years ago, down to the minute. Morgan and Walsh delved into the lives of those who had known Catherine. Her father, now remarried, bore a visage of genuine perplexity. Her mother, residing solo in a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the recording. "That's my Katie," she murmured. "She sounds so frightened." Catherine's former beau at the time of her demise, Mark Jennings, possessed an airtight alibi for the night of the call on duty during a nocturnal shift at the hospital, corroborated by multiple witnesses and surveillance footage. Furthermore, the house stood unoccupied. The call should not have occurred, and yet it did. The inquiry reached an impasse until a call from Catherine's mother breathed new life into the case. "I unearthed something among her belongings," she shared, her voice quivering. "Katie maintained a journal, the final entry. You must see it." Within the journal lay meticulous entries chronicling Catherine's bond with Mark, a love that soured into control, isolation, and ultimately fear. The last entry bore witness to her dread. "He learned of my departure. He's livid. If harm befalls me, it shan't be by chance." Confronted anew, Mark's facade of confidence fractured under the weight of interrogation regarding the journal. "You suspect me of harm due to her words. That is no proof," he retorted. "The accident report places you at the scene prior to emergency services," Morgan pointed out, "before their arrival." "I fretted when she failed to arrive. I sought her out," he maintained. "Her vehicle veered off a secluded road. How did you discern her whereabouts?" she pressed. A pallor washed over his countenance. "I informed you," I fretted. Revisiting the crash site, investigators commissioned ground-penetrating radar. 20 feet from where the vehicle had met its end, they unearthed Catherine's actual phone. The device discovered in the house was but a backup stored at her parents' abode. Scrutiny of the buried phone unveiled erased texts betwixt Catherine and her sister on the night of her demise. "Mark uncovered my plan to depart. He trails me in his car. And later, he steers me off the road." Upon reevaluation, the medical examiner discerned anomalies in the autopsy photographs. The injuries belied a mere accident, showcasing defensive wounds on her hands, telltale bruises hinting at asphyxiation. When officers sought Mark for arrest, he had vanished. Within his dwelling lay a shrine to Catherine photographs, stolen mementos, and clippings chronicling her demise. Amidst his possessions, they stumbled upon audio editing software and scripts detailing the fabrication of the ghost call, a macabre ruse to confound investigators and Catherine's bereaved kin. An inquiry into Mark's prior endeavors as an emergency responder unveiled 2 more dubious deaths of young women, both dismissed as accidents, both entwined with him. 6 days into the manhunt, Mark materialized at the Sullivan residence. Seated in the kitchen, he bore witness to a phone identical to Catherine's. Surrendering without protest, he confessed to Morgan during interrogation. She refused silence even after I silenced her. Her voice persisted, accusing me. I yearn for all to heed her, to deem her still present. A specter offers nary testimony against me. The jury's deliberation spanned a mere 3 hours ere rendering Mark guilty of premeditated murder. As the verdict resonated, Catherine's mother clung to the journal. Her solace in the face of justice finally served not through ethereal means, but through the resounding voice Catherine had left behind. Her words, her trepidations inked upon the pages, her final plea for sanctuary. The phone from the derelict house now rests within the evidence vault. At times, officers swear they hear its phantom ring, though its battery had long been extracted. Catherine's tale endures not as a spectral yarn, but as a testament to the resilience of victims, how they find avenues to speak, even when their voices have been stilled. Story 17. In the dimly lit attic, beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon a forgotten treasure. A porcelain doll, its delicate features frozen in time, with haunting blue eyes that seemed to follow their every move. Sarah and Michael, a young couple captivated by the allure of a Victorian house's hidden past, laughed off the discovery as just another relic of bygone days. Little did they know, the doll held secrets that would unravel their reality. That night, a subtle shift in the air unsettled their dreams. The silence grew heavy, weighing down on their slumber, and when dawn broke, the doll was no longer perched in the attic shadows. It now sat solemnly at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel watching over them. Detective Rachel Winters, a seeker of truth in the shadows of the unknown, was called to the scene of a chilling mystery. The male victim, caught in a desperate escape, lay lifeless in the hallway, his eyes wide with fear, as if fleeing an unseen terror. While in the master bedroom, the female victim's body lay in an eerie pose, limbs contorted at unnatural angles, her expression frozen in a silent scream. As Detective Winters delved into the enigma, whispers of past tragedies echoed through the corridors of the house. Neighbors spoke of shadows dancing in empty rooms and ghostly laughter haunting the night. The forensic team uncovered traces of antique fabrics, reminiscent of doll clothing, lingering in the air around the victims, a spectral presence from another time. With each revelation, the dark history of the house began to unfurl. 3 previous owners met untimely ends, their deaths shrouded in mystery and whispers of the supernatural. A tale emerged of a tormented doll maker, consumed by grief over his daughter's tragic demise, crafting dolls infused with a sinister energy to cheat death itself. In a hidden compartment, old photographs revealed the doll maker's macabre creations, each doll bearing a chilling resemblance to the porcelain figure that now haunted Sarah and Michael. The images seemed to capture the impossible, a doll in motion, shifting between frames as if alive. A distant relative of the doll maker whispered of forbidden rituals and arcane practices, hinting at a dark power lurking within the inanimate. The truth eluded the grasp of logic, slipping through the fingers of reason like smoke in the night. As the case grew colder, Detective Winters clung to the last shreds of evidence, a photograph that bore witness to the cursed legacy of the doll maker. But even in her final moments on the force, the truth remained elusive, slipping into the shadows of the unsolved. The house changed hands once more, its secrets buried in the attic's depths. The doll vanished, leaving behind only whispers of its haunting presence. Detective Winters retired, carrying the weight of unanswered questions in her heart. And so on quiet nights, a faint laughter would drift through the stillness, a reminder of a past that refused to be forgotten, a tale of a doll with eyes that held the secrets of the ages, lost to the mists of time. Story 18. The apartment had sat vacant, a silent witness to time slipping by unnoticed. When the new tenants arrived, their expectations were modest, perhaps a layer of dust, a few remnants of the past left behind. But as they explored, one door stood stubbornly closed, resisting their attempts to coax it open. It was a closet sealed shut from within, holding secrets within its confines. After much effort, the landlord managed to break the lock, revealing a sight that sent shivers down the spines of those present. The walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, jagged scratches as if marking the passage of time in agony. In the corner lay an old flip phone, its screen still faintly illuminated by an unread message, a ghostly whisper in the darkness. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, felt a chill run down her spine as she surveyed the scene before her. It wasn't the obvious signs of violence that unnerved her, but the silent screams captured in those desperate scratch marks an echo of someone's fight for freedom in a place of captivity. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the haunting evidence before them, "and gather all records of the previous tenants." The message on the abandoned phone was simple yet ominous. "I know what you did." The landlord, a nervous man with a wary demeanor, recounted how the previous tenant, a quiet young woman named Emma Caldwell, had vanished suddenly, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unpaid rent. Forensic analysis revealed a disturbing truth hidden within the confines of the closet. Blood samples, most likely belonging to Emma, lined the walls, telling a silent tale of fear and desperation. But there were 2 other DNA profiles discovered, one unidentified, the other belonging to a man who was supposed to be long gone, his death a matter of record. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly came together, a haunting narrative emerged from the shadows of Emma's apartment. Unanswered phone calls, a mysterious boyfriend, and a trail of unsettling encounters hinted at a darkness lurking just beneath the surface of normalcy. Surveillance footage captured the arrival of a shadowy figure, a man in a baseball cap whose presence seemed to herald Emma's disappearance. And when partial fingerprints belonging to a supposedly deceased man, Derek Mercer, were discovered, the web of deceit began to unravel. He staged his death, Shaw concluded, her mind racing to connect the dots between Emma, Derek Mercer, and another missing woman, Lynette Porter. The threads of fate twisted and turned, leading the investigation to a remote property where a grim discovery awaited them. Behind heavy doors lay Lynette Porter, a survivor of Mercer's twisted games, kept in darkness and deprivation as a living testament to his cruelty. Her words, whispered in a voice drained of hope, painted a picture of a man consumed by a need for control and suffering. The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned across boundaries, a shadowy figure on the run with a thirst for inflicting pain and watching it unfold in confined spaces. When he was finally apprehended, a chilling calmness enveloped him, as if he held the key to a truth beyond mortal comprehension. The trial that followed unveiled the intricate web of deception Mercer had spun, a tapestry of lies and manipulation designed to ensnare his victims in a web of darkness. Emma's fate remained a mystery, her body lost to the confines of that dreadful closet where her desperate cries had echoed in vain. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate with a life sentence, a flicker of satisfaction crossed his face, a silent acknowledgement of a twisted victory only he could understand. But in the courtroom, Lynette Porter stood tall, a survivor reclaiming her light from the shadows of the past. The case left an indelible mark on Detective Shaw and her team, reshaping their approach to missing persons cases with a focus on the unseen patterns and shadows that lurked beneath the surface. And as Shaw gazed at the closet door mounted on her office wall, she knew that some crimes left scars that ran deeper than any visible wound, the scars of a soul fighting to break free from the darkness. Story 19. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded hues, a snapshot frozen in time, capturing a birthday celebration long past. Faces adorned with smiles, candles dancing in the gentle flicker of light, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. Yet as the daughter sifted through the box of forgotten memories left to her, something caught her eye. A shape lurking in the background of each photo, a man cloaked in shadows, standing just beyond the reach of the candle's warm glow. He was not a familiar face, not part of the family's cherished memories. No one could recall him being there, yet in every picture he seemed to draw nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the mysterious collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the solemnity of her funeral. Nestled in a cardboard box simply labeled Memories lay a treasure trove of moments frozen in time, documenting family gatherings from her childhood. What should have brought solace and nostalgia instead unraveled a chilling enigma. In the initial photo, he lingered on the fringes of perception, a mere silhouette on the periphery during her 7th birthday festivity. The dark figure loomed near the glass door, his features obscured, silently observing. In the subsequent snapshot, taken moments later, he had stealthily shifted indoors. By the 3rd photo, he stood ominously behind her uncle, a phantom presence unnoticed by all in the frame. Trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she recounted her unsettling discovery. "Dad, who is the man haunting these pictures?" A heavy silence lingered before a sharp intake of breath broke through. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone but family." Her father's response held a tinge of unease. Digital copies of the eerie Polaroids were swiftly dispatched to him. His subsequent call was laced with an uncharacteristic tremor. "That can't be. We would have noticed a stranger." At the precinct, Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the enigmatic photos across his desk. Rain drummed against the windows, casting fleeting shadows that danced across the evidence before them. With methodical precision, the weather detective scrutinized each photo, his gaze narrowing with intrigue. "No one recognized this man?" he inquired, his tone neutral yet tinged with curiosity. "No one," Sarah affirmed, arranging the photos in a chronological sequence. As the detective lined in, the chilling progression of the mysterious figure's movements became starkly apparent. It was as if a creeping paranoia had materialized before their very eyes. Suggesting a theory, Reed proposed the photographer, but doubt lingered in his voice. "My mother took these." She set the timer and hurried into the frame. The detective diligently made copies and initiated a case file. In the ensuing days, he tracked down all surviving attendees of the party. None could recall the man. No external visitors had been present. The secluded rental property had been chosen for its privacy. Facial recognition tools proved futile. The enigmatic figure strategically evaded identification in each frame, almost as if he was aware of the camera's gaze. Yet his presence exuded a calculated intentionality, a sinister purpose. The investigation might have reached a standstill had Sarah not unearthed additional photos from other family albums. Various gatherings, disparate years, but the same shadowy figure lingering in the backdrop, unnoticed and uninvited. A computer specialist meticulously enhanced the images, unveiling details obscured by time. A scar across a wrist, a distinctive ring, a faint reflection in a window exposing facial features previously shrouded in darkness. A breakthrough emerged from dental records. The teeth visible in one enhanced photo matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker who had vanished following questioning in connection to long cold cases of child abductions across the region. Cases that had baffled authorities for decades, cases that had coincided with the dates of the documented gatherings. Keller had been employed by the company responsible for cleaning the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had transpired. Possessing master keys to multiple rental properties in the vicinity, properties where families had convened, properties where children had mysteriously disappeared. Excavating Keller's former residence, authorities unearthed chilling remnants beneath the concrete foundation. A hair clip reminiscent of one worn by a missing girl, a toy car belonging to a boy who vanished after a family reunion, a bracelet that Sarah recognized as her own, a piece she believed had been lost in her childhood. Alone in her apartment, enveloped by the haunting photos that had unveiled a hidden labyrinth of horrors, Sarah received a call from the detective. Remains discovered near one of the vacation properties had been identified through DNA as that of a missing child. Gazing at the final birthday photo, the warm glow of the candles illuminating her family's joyful faces forever preserved in that moment of celebration, Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. In the shadowy recess behind her younger self, barely discernible but undeniably present, the figure loomed, patient, calculating, invisible to all in the blissful ignorance of that captured instant. The revelation had woven together unsolved mysteries spanning decades, offering closure to grieving families, though not in the manner they had hoped for. The enigmatic specter in the family photos had finally been unmasked, his concealed presence acknowledged after years of lurking in plain sight. Gathering the photos, Sarah returned them to the box, now transformed into damning evidence. A testament to the chilling truth that sometimes the most perilous threats are those imperceptible to the naked eye, concealed within the confines of a photograph, silent figures traversing celebrations undetected, leaving naught but a faint imprint of their passage through the stillness of time. Story 20, The House of Liminal Shadows. She glided into the front door, the dust dancing in the stagnant air. The abandoned house stood frozen in time, its walls shedding memories, its furniture draped in veils of neglect. Each step felt like a journey through a forgotten dream, a dream with a mysterious twist. The doors, they all whispered the same invitation, leading her back to the parlor no matter which path she chose. A labyrinth of echoes and shadows, trapping her in a cycle of déjà vu. The only way out, the only escape, was the entrance she had crossed. Yet when she turned to retreat, the front door had vanished, swallowed by the house's insatiable hunger for lost souls. The revelation of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form had transformed the decaying Victorian from a mere relic of the past to a chilling crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind lingered at the threshold, observing the forensic team drifting through the dimness like phantoms. The house had earned a reputation among the locals, a place where compasses spun aimlessly, where whispers lingered in the air. Now it held secrets darker than the tales spun by idle tongues. The initial assessment suggests she's been departed for about 3 days, the medical examiner murmured, his words a soft caress against the eerie silence. The cause appears to be a cruel embrace of asphyxiation. Morgan had been discovered seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her gaze fixed on the entrance as if anticipating a visitor. Her visage serene, hands clasped with grace in her lap, no signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The scene exuded a haunting tranquility that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. Who stumbled upon the grim spectacle? Lind inquired, her gaze skimming over her notes. A real estate agent showcasing the property to potential buyers, her partner replied. They entered, caught sight of her presence, mistaking her for an intruder until they drew near. The house had stood abandoned since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly half a decade ago. Legal disputes had left the property in a state of limbo, unwanted, unsold, a fading memory except for those who sought thrills in its decaying halls. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old scholar delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had become entwined in the house's enigmatic allure. Her friends painted a portrait of a meticulous, driven individual captivated by spaces that defied the norms of design. The forsaken Victorian, with its reputation for ensnaring wanderers, must have beckoned to her like a siren's song. Her roommate reported her absence 2 sunsets ago, Lind noted. Morgan spoke of visiting the house where lost souls roam for her scholarly pursuits. The investigation unveiled Morgan's recurrent visits to the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled peculiar acoustics, chilling pockets of cold, and doors that toyed with the fabric of reality. In her final musings, she hinted at deploying specialized equipment to document what she cryptically referred to as spatial enigmas. Alas, said equipment remained elusive. The post-mortem examination unearthed an unforeseen detailed traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, a substance derived from a plant utilized in esoteric rituals. While known to induce disorientation and vivid illusions, the dosage discovered was insufficient to claim a life. She was no seeker of recreational substances, her partner attested during interrogation. Morgan was steadfast in her research ethics. Deliberately clouding her perceptions would have been anathema to her. Digital sleuthing unearthed fragments of erased correspondence on Morgan's phone, dialogues with a kindred spirit drawn to the house's mysteries, an individual who claimed to grasp its arcane essence. The exchanges delved into realms of intimacy and riddles. The house retains memories of the past, one message whispered. It craves to be acknowledged. The trail led Lynn to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian engaged in discourse with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial conundrums had captivated her intellect, blossoming their professional bond into a personal intimacy. Upon interrogation, Reeves appeared genuinely stricken by Morgan's tragedy. "The house bears a legacy," he confided. Its progenitor wove illusions and warped perspectives into its very foundations. Morgan sensed a deeper truth, a reality beyond mere optical illusions. Yet Reeves possessed an alibi for the presumed time of Morgan's passing. Surveillance footage depicted him lecturing at a distant university symposium during the fateful hours. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, now dwelling in foreign lands. When approached by the investigators, he unraveled a family secret shrouded in shadows for generations. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to meet their end in that house," he divulged. "There were others, always discovered in the parlor, forever at peace. The family christened it the Claiming." He furnished Lind with journals spanning eras, detailing demises initially attributed to natural causes. A pattern emerged: individuals ensnared within the house's embrace ultimately succumbed to what the family cryptically termed the sway. A secondary scouring of the premises unveiled a concealed alcove behind the parlor hearth. Within, investigators stumbled upon Morgan's missing apparatus and something more. A sanctum housing relics from myriad indigenous cultures, arranged in a meticulous pattern of geometries. At its heart sat a weathered figurine, its countenance smoothed by the passage of countless hands across epochs. Analysis linked the carving to a deity guarding the fringes of existence, gateways between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid found in Morgan's system adorn the artifacts. The case veered in a new direction when dust analyses within the house hinted at a spectral presence during Morgan's final hours. Partial prints, alien to Morgan's or any documented visitors, lingered on doorknobs throughout the dwelling. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his abode. Mirroring Morgan's repose, he sat watchful by the entrance, the alkaloid echoing within his veins. Clasped in his grip was a key unyielding to his abode's locks, yet fitting flawlessly into the concealed enclave within the Victorian. In his parting message, addressed to himself as if etching a legacy, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't ensnare flesh, but rather perception." Morgan saw the truth: the doors guide as they always have, yet an illusion of circles entwines you. Once enlightenment dawns, departure is but a choice, but by then, the yearning to linger consumes you. The case lingers unresolved, branded as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian stands condemned, its secrets veiled behind barriers erected by the law. Whispers persist of phantom lights flickering within its walls on certain eves, of visitors vanishing into its maw without a trace. Some locals claim the house claims those who pry too deeply into its heart. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves uncovered a force ancient and potent, dwelling in the interstices of reality. The truth eludes grasp, akin to an escape in a dwelling where each portal leads back to the genesis of the enigma. Story 21. The town held its secrets close, whispering of the house that lingered at the edge of the woods. Silent and forgotten, its windows veiled in darkness, its porch weighed down by the burden of time. No one laid claim to it, no memory lingered of who had raised its timbers. Yet when a band of wanderers strayed too near, they beheld a chilling sight, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ancient omens. And at the end of the list, fresh and untouched, a name unknown to them all. A name that sent shivers through their souls when one of them dared to utter, "That name is mine." In the dead of night, the call came in. Dispatch marked it as routine trespassing, the voice of Mason Wright, the lead hiker who stumbled upon his own name engraved upon the forsaken dwelling. Officers expected mere mischief, the handiwork of reckless youth, but what they uncovered defied all logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight draped the forest in a cloak of shadows. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the weathered front of the house. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall, some faded with age, barely discernible against the worn wood, while others remained sharp as if freshly carved. And there at the base, Mason Wright, the letters still smelling of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his words materializing in icy puffs. "How could my name be known to anyone here?" The investigation unfolded, delving into the backgrounds of each name inscribed. The findings sent a chill through the detective team. Every name belonged to a soul vanished over the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown frigid, others still burned with hope, but all shared a haunting detail: they had vanished while wandering these woods alone. Forensic experts meticulously cataloged each carving, noting the depths, techniques, and weathering of the names. The oldest, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance 37 years prior, a tale of a young woman swallowed by the forest, leaving only a solitary boot beside a babbling brook. Detective Keller probed Mason's tale tirelessly, but his story remained unwavering. No threads connected him to the other names haunting the walls. The spotlight shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, unveiled snapshots from their trek. Analysts uncovered a disquieting presence, a spectral figure that lingered in the background of 3 photos, slender and obscured by the forest's embrace. A search of the house's interior unearthed a macabre tableau in the basement. The personal effects of the missing hikers adorned shelves, each item labeled with a name from the exterior wall. Watches frozen in time, backpacks laden with memories, cameras that gazed upon faces long faded, and beneath the dust, bloodstains whispered of horrors unspeakable. As the inquiry deepened, Mason's demeanor grew increasingly fraught. Shadows danced at his window, fresh tracks led to his door but not away, specters loomed in the night. The department stationed a guard at his side, yet paranoia gripped Mason in its icy talons. A breakthrough came with the unearthing of land records from the county archives. The house had belonged to Victor Blackwood, a recluse of the woods. A tall, gaunt phantom who shunned the world, vanishing 15 years past without a trace. Keller's warrant unveiled a labyrinth of hunting blinds, peering onto the paths of unwitting hikers. Within one blind lay a journal, a chronicle of prey observed, of lives marked for the taking. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned realms, helicopters scouring the canopy, teams scouring every crevice. But the hunter eluded them, slipping through the forest's grasp like smoke. Mason evaded their gaze, his apartment vacant, a chilling message etched upon his chamber wall. The search for Mason ebbed and flowed, until a revelation within Blackwood's lair shook the ground beneath their feet. A hidden chamber revealed a workshop of dread, a freshly carved name awaiting its place upon the wall. A name that chilled Keller's spine. It belonged to the lead technician, vanished without a trace. A vigilant watch encircled the house, cameras tracing every motion, sensors attuned to the whisper of intruders. And one fateful night, the trap was sprung. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and sinewy, moving with an otherworldly grace. Tactical teams closed in, only for the cameras to falter, the figure vanishing as swiftly as mist in the morning light. Today, the house stands under vigilant watch, a sentinel of the night. Mason and the technician remain lost to the woods, their fates entwined with the haunting names upon the wall. The investigation presses on as new vanishings echo through the forest's depths. The names etched in wood have become a whispered legend, a tale that few dare to speak, and the local hikers tread cautiously, fearful that a mere mention might consign them to that silent register, the names unspoken. Story 22. The tale of the new homeowners began with a peculiar occurrence, the crackling of the old intercom system late at night. This relic from bygone days had been rewired but remained forgotten until one fateful night. The husband, seized by curiosity, pressed the button and a whisper echoed through the crackling speaker. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling. His wife, standing behind him, denied speaking those words. The Victorian manor, nestled among ancient oak trees, concealed a past that belied its renovated modern interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, enamored with history, acquired the property at a surprisingly affordable price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during the walkthrough. The vintage intercom system, linking all rooms, had captivated the Parker couple with its historical charm. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property, the gravel crunching beneath her unmarked vehicle's tires. Initially reported as a potential break-in, the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper mystery. Daniel Parker, his pallor evident even in the dim porch light, welcomed Detective Reeves. It all started with the intercom, he recounted, leading her through the grand foyer. First, there was static, then whispers, and eventually full sentences. My wife thought I was imagining things until she heard it too. In the living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, clutching a steaming mug she dared not touch. "We uncovered something behind the wall," she began. Daniel wanted to expand the kitchen pantry, and when he removed the drywall, her voice wavered. Concealed behind the wall, wrapped in deteriorating plastic, lay a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves, donning gloves, gingerly turned its brittle pages. The elegant yet frantic handwriting belonged to Alina, the home's previous owner. The entries chronicled Alina's growing fear of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. "The final entry dates back 30 years, Daniel explained. "After that, nothing." The previous owners mentioned buying the house from an elderly man who relocated to a retirement community. Further investigation confirmed that Vincent and Alina Blackwood had indeed been the house's owners. Records indicated Vincent sold the property shortly after Alina's disappearance, with no official divorce or change of address for her. A team assembled by Detective Reeves meticulously scrutinized the property. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation. As investigators broke through the aged concrete, the truth emerged: a skeleton of a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of blunt force trauma to the skull. Among the remains, a gold wedding band bore the inscription, "To Alina, my eternal love." The evidence swiftly incriminated Vincent Blackwood, now aged and residing in a care facility. Confronted with the truth, his chilling response unnerved even the seasoned detective. "She wouldn't cease her chatter," Vincent confessed calmly. "Through that infernal intercom, she incessantly questioned and monitored me. I disconnected it, but she reconnected it herself, claiming she wanted to reach me wherever I was in the house." His vacant gaze met theirs. I yearned for silence. In his confession, Vincent disclosed his elaborate deception of Alina's departure, sending forged postcards from various locations to neighbors. He had lived in the house for years, walking unknowingly over the spot where his wife lay buried. The trial swiftly concluded with Vincent pleading guilty to murder. The judge highlighted the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades of deceit that ensued. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark past, sold the property. Before departing, they held a memorial for Alina in the restored garden, now free from secrets. Subsequent owners removed the intercom system during renovations. Workers reported hearing static and whispers during its removal, attributing it to interference from their tools. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival. Closing the manila folder, she pondered how the house had transcended time to unveil its hidden truth. Justice had finally caught up with Vincent Blackwood thanks to Alina's persistent voice. Among local law enforcement, the case became known as the house that answered back. Occasionally, Detective Reeves passed by the property on her way home. Though she never halted, she would slow down, window cracked open, listening for whispers carried on the evening breeze. Story 23. Once upon a time, in a quaint little coffee shop, there was a man who had made it his daily ritual to sit at the same table, order the same black coffee without sugar, and immerse himself in the comforting silence of his own company. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day, he failed to show up. Concerned, the police investigated and discovered a wallet left behind at his usual seat. Inside the wallet was a driver's license with a photo, yet strangely, there was no name, no address, just an eerie blank space where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the perplexing case, her fingertips tracing the cold metal table as she scrutinized the security footage repeatedly. The man, now known as John Doe in the case files, appeared unassuming on camera, average in height, with unremarkable features, clad in a navy coat and carrying a worn leather messenger bag. His disappearance defied logic, for he had entered the coffee shop, taken his seat, but had seemingly vanished into thin air without a trace. Each replay of the security footage only deepened the mystery. John had followed his usual routine, writing in a notebook while occasionally gazing out of the window. Then, in a pivotal moment, he placed his wallet on the table, rose, and headed towards the restroom area. Yet he never returned. He never exited through any door. It was as though he had dissolved into the very essence of the shop itself. As Mercer delved further into the enigma, she uncovered a wallet devoid of personal details, credit cards with non-existent accounts, and a lone business card with a barely visible phone number that led to silence on the other end of the line. The barista's recollections painted a picture of a solitary individual, always polite, always alone, always engrossed in writing in his mysterious notebook. The notebook, filled with cryptic symbols and coded text, baffled even the most seasoned cryptographers. Architectural sketches of unfamiliar buildings hinted at a world beyond their own. Mercer's investigation led to dead ends. No missing persons matched his description. No fingerprints were on file. It was as if John Doe existed solely within the realm of that coffee shop. A peculiar detail caught Mercer's attention in the security footage, a flicker in the time stamp whenever John entered the shop. Determined to unravel the truth, she returned to the coffee shop and noticed an antique mirror hanging between the entrance and the restroom hallway, its ornate frame etched with symbols akin to those in John's notebook. Upon questioning the shop owner, Mercer learned of the mirror's long history within the building, its weight making it immovable. Intrigued, she approached the mirror and felt an inexplicable warmth emanating from its surface. The revelation of a hidden compartment behind the mirror, filled with identical wallets and a journal chronicling decades of entries in John's handwriting, sent shivers down her spine. The final journal entry hinted at experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, mentioning the coffee shop as an anchor point where realities intersected, and the mirror as a gateway. Strange occurrences around the coffee shop, sightings of John Doe where he should not be, and reflections moving independently added layers to the mystery. A breakthrough came with the arrival of Margaret Keller, a former physicist who shed light on John Doe's true identity as Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist who had vanished during experiments with quantum mirrors. Weston's belief in parallel realities and weak points between them aligned with the strange events at the coffee shop. Mercer uncovered the coffee shop's connection to Weston's past, built atop the same laboratory where he had disappeared. The investigation reached its climax when Mercer, alone in the dead of night, witnessed two versions of Weston in the security footage, one watching the other at his table through the shattered mirror's reflection. With the mirror shattered and a final warning left behind, the case of the man who didn't exist remained a haunting enigma. The coffee shop closed its doors, the building demolished, and Daniel Weston's fate remained unknown. Mercer, consumed by the mystery, found solace in writing, mirroring Weston's own obsession with the unknown. A fragment of an antique mirror adorned her wall, a silent witness to the unexplained phenomena that once gripped the sleepy town. And so, the tale of Daniel Weston, the man lost in the mysteries of parallel realities, faded into the whispers of the night, leaving behind a lingering sense of wonder and intrigue in its wake. Story 24. The new occupants believed it was merely peeling wallpaper. Yet as they delicately removed each layer, a hidden narrative began to surface. Etched in ink, repeated endlessly, was a name. The very same name, saturating every corner of the wall, scripted in a frantic, uneven hand. It wasn't the name of the previous proprietors. It wasn't documented anywhere. However, a search online unveiled a solitary outcome of vanished persons case from bygone decades, and the unsettling revelation. The woman captured in the photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the one who had handed them the keys to the house. Michael and Sarah Klein hadn't planned on restoring the Victorian-era abode right away. The enchanting old domicile came with a surprisingly modest price tag, and the former owner, a reserved, refined woman with dark hair streaked with silver, seemed eager to part ways, mentioning her relocation across the country. The couple had been captivated by the dwelling's personality, its intricate wood craftsmanship and lofty ceilings whispering tales of a bygone era. It all commenced with a simple water stain in the principal bedroom. Sarah noticed a yellowish blemish spreading across the floral wallpaper. When Michael pressed his fingertips against it, the paper yielded, unveiling another stratum beneath. Intrigued, they cautiously peeled back the damaged area. The initial layer exposed outdated paisley designs from what they presumed was the 1970s. Below that, striped paper from an earlier era. However, as they persisted, something unexpected surfaced in the third layer down. Writing, dark ink on faded beige paper. Not random scrawls, but a name, Alina Winters, etched repeatedly, the script becoming increasingly frantic and erratic across the wall. "Who is Alina Winters?" Sarah murmured, her fingers tracing the frenzied text. The discovery left them both unsettled. That evening, Michael sat at the kitchen island, laptop agape, scouring property records. The house had switched hands numerous times over the years. No trace of Alina Winters appeared in any documentation. The woman who had sold them the house was identified as Margaret Cavendish. Sarah joined him, clutching a mug of coffee. Try searching just the name. The online hunt yielded scant findings until they stumbled upon an archived newspaper article, digitized from microfiche. Alina Winters, aged 27, reported missing during the winter season. The monochrome image depicted a young woman with dark hair and distinct eyes that mirrored those of Margaret Cavendish, the woman who had sold them the house. "This article dates back 30 years, Michael murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. Margaret would be approximately the right age now, but Sarah swallowed hard. The missing woman never received closure, no body discovered, no suspects identified. Their inquisitiveness morphed into an all-consuming fixation. Sarah reached out to the former homeowners, retracing their steps through county archives. The renovation efforts came to a standstill as they dedicated their evenings to this impromptu investigation. They uncovered that Margaret Cavendish had owned the house for merely 7 months before selling it to them, a peculiar occurrence considering the extensive paperwork and inspections they had undergone. The detective assigned to the cold case had retired long ago. When Michael managed to track him down, the man immediately recalled the case. His voice crackled through the speakerphone as he recounted the inquiry. Alina Winters was reported missing by her roommate. No signs of a struggle at her apartment. Her car discovered abandoned near the highway. The case went cold swiftly, no witnesses, no evidence of foul play, just vanished. Michael hesitated before inquiring, "Did you ever interview a Margaret Cavendish?" A weighty silence enveloped the line. "No, the name doesn't ring a bell. Why do you ask?" Upon elucidating their discovery and presenting him with photos of both women side by side via email, the retired detective pledged to make some inquiries. Within days, a detective from the current force reached out to them, seeking permission to inspect the wall. Their residence transformed into an active crime scene. Forensics teams meticulously documented and extracted sections of the wallpaper. Analysis unveiled that the ink dated back around 30 years. Handwriting analysts compared the wall inscriptions to samples of Alina's handwriting from old journals provided by her family. The findings proved inconclusive. Meanwhile, Sarah stumbled upon a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet's floorboards. Inside lay a driver's license belonging to Alina Winters, alongside several other identification cards bearing different names, all featuring the same visage with subtle discrepancies: hair color, glasses, expressions. The ultimate ID, Margaret Cavendish, aligned with their home seller. When authorities endeavored to locate Margaret using the forwarding address she had provided, they discovered it was non-existent. Her phone number had been disconnected. The bank account that received their payment had been closed. Margaret Cavendish had vanished, much like Alina Winters had decades earlier. Then came the revelation that fundamentally reshaped the investigation. DNA analysis of hair strands retrieved from deep within the wall cavity matched Alina Winters. However, fingerprints lifted from the writing itself matched an entirely different profile, one belonging to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, who had been institutionalized shortly after Alina's disappearance. Rebecca Eldridge had been diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder. She had eluded the institution on multiple occasions over the years. Her medical records unveiled something chilling. One of her documented alter egos identified herself as Alina. The investigation exposed that Rebecca had been Alina's childhood friend, fixated on her to the point of imitation. When Alina rebuffed her increasingly unsettling advances, something within Rebecca fractured. She had assumed Alina's identity literally and metaphorically, and fabricated an intricate network of personas to sustain the illusion. The scribbled name represented Rebecca's desperate endeavor to cling to reality, to recollect who she truly was beneath the assumed identities. The wall had become both a confession and a prison, a tangible manifestation of her shattered psyche. Sarah and Michael gazed from their front porch as forensic teams excavated specific regions of their backyard, guided by ground-penetrating radar that had detected anomalies below the surface. The cold case had abruptly heated up. The remains retrieved from beneath the garden belonged to Alina Winters. Rebecca Eldridge, identified to Michael and Sarah as Margaret Cavendish, was eventually apprehended while attempting to cross the border with yet another identity. Confronted with evidence, the persona masquerading as Margaret crumbled, and another emerged, one who admitted to killing a leaner in a jealous frenzy. The names on the wall had served as both a memorial and a manifestation of guilt, inscribed by a fractured mind striving to retain shreds of truth despite itself. For Aliner's family, justice arrived 3 decades overdue. For Michael and Sarah, their cherished abode became infamous, a mere footnote in true crime annals, forever remembered as the house where the very walls themselves confessed to murder. Story 25, the gentle current whispered its lullaby that morning, caressing the glassy, still water. The fisherman's eyes wandered lazily, almost missing the peculiar sight of a suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially dismissing it as discarded clothes, a pungent odor soon invaded his senses as he drew nearer. Chains embraced the case, its edges rusted by time and weather. When it was pried open, it didn't reveal garments, but a haunting sight. Hair tangled, fingers frozen in a desperate grip, and at the depths, a chilling note, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived, delicately pressing a handkerchief to her nose as she beheld the somber scene before her. The victim, a woman in her 30s with dark locks and now pallid skin, bore the marks of her watery grave. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously catalogued every detail before the body was tenderly lifted away. Struck Mercer was not just the disposal, but the eerie reverence shown toward the victim's manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in opulent attire. She wasn't just discarded here, Mercer observed, her eyes tracing the rhythmic dance of the water against the shore. She was prepared, presented. Identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her high-end listings, the woman lived alone in a luxurious neighborhood, her existence devoid of offspring following a divorce. Colleagues painted her as driven, precise, and discreet. Her disappearance, reported by her assistant after missing a crucial showing, raised eyebrows. She wouldn't have missed that appointment, the assistant insisted during interrogation. That sale was her golden ticket. Walsh's modernist abode was a portrait of perfection, every facet flawlessly arranged. Yet a drawer slightly ajar in her office revealed a hidden treasure, a leather-bound journal. The final entry whispered of a lurking presence, a watcher with shifting plates. Unveiling Walsh's digital footprint exposed a peculiar pattern, anonymous messages flooding her inbox, all bearing the same eerie phrase, "I see your perfection." Each message sent at the same precise time on different days. Her internet history divulged frantic searches for security systems and self-defense tools. Mercer's mind wove a tapestry connecting the dots, the meticulous corpse arrangement, the elaborate presentation. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she shared with her partner. This was no crime of passion, this was a ritual. A breakthrough emerged unexpectedly. A local pawnshop owner recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among his wares, absent from her belongings. The culprit, a regular patron named Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker. Surveillance footage revealed his frequent visits to Walsh's building, sometimes with his tools, sometimes without, always during her absences. Linden's lackluster apartment concealed a chilling secret, walls plastered with snapshots of Walsh and other women, all sharing a striking resemblance, all captured without consent. Some faces were marred with crimson strokes. Walsh was the third in his twisted collection. Concealed behind a false panel in his closet rested a shrine, each victim's possessions meticulously arranged: a lock of hair, stained tissues, keys, receipts. A journal chronicling their lives, routines, preferences. Linden's demeanor remained serene in the frigid interrogation room. With a composed voice, he uttered the chilling truth. They were flawed, he confessed, devoid of emotion. They paraded perfection, but I saw through their facade. Catherine's desk was always in disarray. Her lipstick application was imperfect. Her perfection was a charade, The hunt for the other victims mentioned in his note unfurled, leading investigators to remote corners where two more suitcases surfaced, each cradling women mirroring Walsh's image. Real estate agents like her, touting an obsession with precision. In court, Lyndon sat motionless, his expression inscrutable as the prosecution unraveled his twisted methods. Months of stalking, learning, invading their lives, and ultimately correcting their perceived flaws before extinguishing their light. The families of the victims stood in silent vigil as the gavel struck, sealing Lyndon's fate with a life sentence, no chance of parole. For Mercer, the case closed officially, yet shadows of inquiry lingered. What ignited Lyndon's fixation on these women? What inner blemish was he trying to erase through his macabre deeds? The river meandered downstream, its waters cleansing all traces. But in Mercer's precinct, atop her desk, lay copies of those haunting journals, an unsettling reminder that in the facade of normalcy, darkness can lurk, and the deadliest predators may be the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting for a single flaw to be exposed. Story 26, Reflections of Deception. She cleared the mist from the mirror, her gaze meeting her own reflection. Everything appeared normal, her features in place, her attire unchanged. Yet a subtle unease crept over her as she continued to stare. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. When she turned away, the reflection remained motionless, observing. This eerie encounter marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What transpired next bewildered investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a humble apartment nestled in a tranquil suburban enclave. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she led a solitary existence, though she maintained polite relations with her neighbors. Working as a data analyst for a mid-sized corporation, her days unfolded with regimented precision. No one could have foreseen that she would become the focal point of a baffling criminal inquiry. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's home began to shift inexplicably, nothing missing, just rearranged. A mug on a different shelf, books reorganized, her toothbrush out of place. She brushed off these peculiar occurrences as mere lapses in memory, attributing them to the strain of long hours spent poring over spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights. Detective Marion Shaw's involvement commenced when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial evaluation yielded no concrete evidence of criminal activity, hinting at a possible mental health concern rather than a law enforcement matter. Shaw cataloged the report among a pile of low-priority cases, noting there was no tangible evidence, no signs of forced entry or missing items, just a woman plagued by a sense of unease within her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror incident. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted in vivid detail how her reflection appeared to move independently, casting an unsettling aura of surveillance even in solitude. This time, she presented proof: a self-installed security camera aimed at her front door. The footage unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed by an exact replica of herself entering the apartment 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic analysts scrutinized the footage for signs of manipulation or tampering, but found none. The intruder moved with precision, dressed identically, and even carried Rebecca's distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca had already clocked in at her office across town, as confirmed by time-stamped footage from her workplace security system. "We are facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with uncanny accuracy. The investigation escalated, with fingerprints throughout the apartment matching solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA traces discovered. Neighbors attested to seeing nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's routine comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recalled a peculiar incident where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home, receiving no response, a departure from her usual behavior. Rebecca commenced documenting the disruptions in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space escalated vanishing food, unauthorized computer searches, and unsettling selfies on her phone that mirrored her likeness but lacked her memory. Some photos captured her with a subtly distorted expression, an exaggerated smile, or intense eyes. "I feel as though I am losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their subsequent meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this elaborate charade to make me believe so." A breakthrough emerged as investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated Rebecca's home during specific pre-scheduled events, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery trips. These were activities with predictable durations, implying an intimate knowledge of Rebecca's routine. "This is not a random intrusion," Shaw explained. "It is a targeted surveillance and infiltration executed with meticulous precision." A forensic psychologist postulated that they were dealing with a fixation case, a perpetrator fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, potentially aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences, though rare, were documented in psychological literature, often stemming from a psychological rupture and a coveting of traits possessed by the victim. The inquiry narrowed its focus when Rebecca mentioned a former co-worker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had worked closely with Rebecca, often remarking on their shared similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, one of which read, "We could be interchangeable. At times, I feel I embody you more than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence, unveiling a shocking revelation that transformed the case from unsettling to chilling. A room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with countless images of Rebecca captured unawares shopping, socializing, entering her apartment. The closet harbored replicas of Rebecca's wardrobe, while a vanity held makeup brands favored by Rebecca, accompanied by detailed notes cataloging her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most perturbing were the rehearsal videos, capturing Lily mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions, progressing from awkward mimicry to near-perfect replication. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "Her intent was not to imitate, but to obliterate me." Forensic experts unearthed sophisticated equipment for producing key duplicates and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had crafted an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a meticulously detailed calendar predicting her daily agenda. What remained elusive was Lily's ultimate objective. Journals discovered in her dwelling contained delirious entries oscillating between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The final chilling entry read, "Soon, only one of us will endure. The stronger persona shall prevail." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a residence in disarray, hinting at a hurried escape. A nationwide alert was disseminated, and Rebecca was relocated to a safe-guarded location under continuous surveillance. For 3 weeks, every facet of her former life was meticulously monitored, yet Lily remained elusive. The case assumed a harrowing turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported a startling observation. Rebecca had been sighted entering the premises despite being on official leave. Surveillance footage confirmed the unlikely event a figure bearing a striking resemblance to Rebecca had accessed the building using a valid ID card, proceeding to her former workstation and scrutinizing her files for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained sequestered in protective custody at a secure shelter, rendering her presence at the office impossible. The grim reality surfaced. Lily had not absconded, but had made her audacious move. She now inhabited Rebecca's life, assuming her identity while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case continues to linger as an open investigation. Lily Winters remains at large, and Rebecca Thorne has forsaken her former existence, forging a new persona in an undisclosed sanctuary. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, a visual juxtaposition of two strikingly similar women, one being Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. She often scrutinizes their features, seeking subtle disparities to differentiate between them. The most chilling aspect, Shaw imparts to novice detectives, is not the capacity for someone to mirror your appearance or voice. It is their fervent desire to usurp your identity so fervently that they efface their own existence in the process. Identity transcends mere presentation. It is our most guarded possession, and sometimes its worth is only truly grasped when threatened by a perpetrator aiming to claim it. Story 27: The Mystery of the Whispering House. She desired to freshen up the nursery before the new arrival. The walls, once adorned in a soft blue hue, now held a history of tales within their layers. Brush in hand, the first stroke of white paint unveiled something beneath faint letters, gradually sharpening into clear words, a message hidden beneath the surface. Don't let it hear you. Her breath hitched in her throat. Stepping back, her eyes caught sight of it, tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, too high for a child to reach. This discovery within the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the inception of what investigators later dubbed the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style dwelling mere months ago at a remarkably low price. The real estate agent had alluded to only minor cosmetic issues, omitting any mention of the property's dark past. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, rang the doorbell. A woman, her belly swollen with pregnancy, answered, clad in overalls splattered with paint. Weariness clung to her, evident in the circles beneath her eyes. It was clear she had not slept in days. The detective observed the tremble in her hands as she recounted finding the hidden message and the eerie handprints. The previous owners left abruptly, the woman disclosed. Neighbors claim they vanished in the dead of night. No moving truck, just essentials packed into their car. Detective Klein treaded through the aged home, the floors creaking beneath her footsteps. Standing in the nursery, she examined the partially painted wall where the obscured message still lingered from the abandoned paint job. Beside it, 5 small handprints marked the wet paint, positioned at a height meant for an adult, not a child. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records. The house had changed owners 8 times in 3 decades, an unusually high turnover rate. Each family had resided for less than 2 years. More troubling were the reports of child welfare filed for 3 of those families. Children describing, whispers emanating from the walls, and a sensation of being watched as they slumbered. The detective delved further, unearthing construction records and historical accounts. The house was once the domain of Alina Blackwood, a wealthy widow without offspring who had operated an orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings referenced 5 missing children under her care. Authorities of that era suspected they had fled, a common occurrence for orphans in those times. Upon Aliner's passing, renovators discovered a sealed chamber behind the nursery wall. Inside lay remnants of children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and garments, but no remains. The case went cold, buried in dusty archives. Detective Klein interviewed former residents, piecing together a chilling narrative. Each family with children reported uncanny incidents, toys rearranged overnight, childish laughter echoing in empty corridors, and crayon drawings materializing on walls. Most dismissed these occurrences as mere figments of imagination until the hidden messages surfaced during repainting. A forensic linguist analyzed the writing, linking it to samples from Aliner Blackwood's journals. More disconcerting were the handprints uniform in size and placement over the years, despite different children inhabiting the home. The investigation took a darker turn when the detective persuaded the current owners to permit ground-penetrating radar in the basement. Anomalies in the readings indicated 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each resembling a child's size. Workers breached the concrete, a grim revelation unfolded. 5 small sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis disclosed that the children had perished during Aliner's tenure in the house. Each child still wore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had supposedly absconded. Luminol sprayed in the nursery unveiled handprints glowing in the darkness, hidden beneath layers of paint, unseen by the naked eye. Countless handprints, as if the children had endeavored to escape. Aliner's journals, salvaged from county archives, exposed her macabre intentions. She believed orphaned children harbored a unique spiritual essence. By confining them in the secret room, she sought to extract their vitality to prolong her own existence. The children had etched their warnings into the walls with their nails and bits of metal, hoping future occupants would uncover their fate. The case concluded with the proper burial of the 5 victims. Their names were finally acknowledged not as runaways but as victims of a heinous crime. The house remained vacant, the expectant couple refusing to set foot within to retrieve their belongings. Detective Klein submitted her final report, featuring photographs of the luminous handprints and the concealed message below the paint. While justice had been served for the initial victims, an enigmatic presence lingered within the house, reaching out through layers of time and paint. The nursery walls were demolished during renovation, yet workers reported hearing whispers of children from the rubble. None dared return after their shifts concluded. Eventually condemned, the house became another unsolved case, a chilling reminder that certain crimes leave imprints that no amount of fresh paint can erase.